Good evening. We will go ahead and get our standing committee meetings underway. Welcome to Public Works and Safety Standing Committee for Monday, April 24, 2023. And in our usual tradition here at Public Works and Safety, we're going to get started so that we can finish. And I want to thank Commissioner Gail Townsend for standing in tonight on our committee. And before I call our meeting to order, I do want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site, and all participants joining by phone should mute phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so the public knows who is speaking. And be sure to speak directly into a microphone so that all comments can be heard and the record of the meeting can be accurate. This is critical given the number of remote participants, and it's also current guidance from our Kansas Attorney General. The public's allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting. And those comments are included in the record of the meeting. The public can indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before our meeting, and also have an opportunity to provide brief comments by phone or Zoom or from the fifth floor conference room here in the municipal office building. I will now call a meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Kane.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Johnson. We have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
And there are no revisions on our agenda tonight, and also no minutes for approval. So the first four items are all resolutions, and they are authorizing a memorandum of understanding between our local school districts, the unified government, and the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department to administer a 911 call taker training program. We have our Director of HR, Renee Ramirez, and Deputy Chief Sims with Kansas City, Kansas Police Department to present the item, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. We're pleased to be in front of you here again this evening to present an update on the information that we presented to you all in late December to the Standing Committee and the full Commission. We're proud to say that we have reached out to other school districts like you had suggested to us, and we are in the process of completing now agreements with USD 500, Turner, Piper, and Bonner to include those seniors. Again, the goal of this partnership was to create pathways for young individuals to be able to gain a skill set within our workforce to be eligible for full-time employment when they graduate. So with that said, I will turn it over to Deputy Chief.
And thank you again for having us and hearing us on this topic again. And I apologize, the chief wasn't able to make it this evening due to another engagement. And I'm George Sims. Can you hear me?
A little closer. Thank you.
Better? That's maybe a little too good. I'm Deputy Chief George Sims, KCKPD, sitting in for Chief Oakland and in the police department. As we proposed last year, we're pursuing a work study learning partnership with our local high schools. Initially, we were reaching out to USD 500. We have since then expanded to the other school districts. The program is a multiple day per week, half day work study with a total of approximately 320 hours of training as a basic telecommunicator. Students who enter into and are able to complete this program will get multiple certifications as they go through it, including the basic telecommunicator, NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center, our computer system, emergency medical dispatch certification, CPR certification, and they'll also learn to use the CAD system, various criminal justice information computers and things of that nature. And as noted on the slide, it is a high stress environment. It's not, this is not going to be a cakewalk for students who are ready to walk in the door and take this challenge on. It is going to be preparation for real world work, because it is real world work from the moment they walk in the door, essentially. We have a plan. Currently, we're able to, due to limitations of space and available trainers, we're holding this at 4 student 911 cadets or work study participants. We're looking at some possibilities of whether we'll be able to accommodate additional trainees by working through some scheduling issues and maybe having some in the morning, some in the afternoon, but all that's tentative. So fingers crossed. I'd like to be able to take on more students if we're able, and if we have more students who want to volunteer for this program. We're pretty excited about it. I've talked to several dispatchers who are trainers who are also excited about it. Our partners, obviously, that we've spoke to with the school districts as well. So we're pretty eager to move this forward. And if we can expand the program, then all the better. Students are paid. And I mentioned it's half day. Pre-employment screening. The screening that the students will go through will be just identical to the screening that we go through with any dispatcher 911 call taker hire. So they'll have to go through an application, a background process, and so forth. Future employment. So a work study participant, we hope that this ends up being a positive experience for them, and when they can successfully complete the program and then pursue full-time employment with the police department. We're looking for young candidates who are ready to invest in a career in law enforcement or law enforcement related activity. However, completion of the program does not guarantee that they're going to be able to get a job with us. We have to have the vacancy and they have to be a good fit. But we do hope to, at the conclusion of this program, be able to bring in up to 4 new 911 call takers or dispatchers. If they come on as a 911 call taker, they're trained at this point. They're ready to start as a full-time employee right out of the gate once they get their high school diploma. If they decide to become a dispatcher, then they will move on to the next phase of training, which will be the police radio system and interacting with the units in the field and the whole other layer of CAD activity that goes along with moving to the radio side of dispatch. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Kane.
First of all, I think this is great. Did we talk to Bishop Ward at all?
Yes, we did. We did get a lead on a possible candidate for employment, but they're not going to be partnering with us on this program. They don't have a program that matches for a work study, for lack of a better way to put it.
Okay, cool. I love it.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner. Agree with Commissioner Kane. This is an amazing program. It's becoming more common that not everyone goes to college. Not everyone has that either route or path to get there, or they just might not want to. And so this opens another door, another opportunity for our high school seniors to experience something. And I hope, because I know that they're in their senior year, they're wrapping up. Are there guardrails to ensure that they also still stay focused on their schoolwork at high school? As you said, since it is a high pressure, high stress environment, as they're going through this training, how is our guardrails to ensure that they're still doing their schoolwork as well?
Outside of our program, that's going to fall on the school district to manage. That is the short answer. We'll have a regular liaison back and forth with the school, and if they start reporting problems, then obviously they are young people, and we'll have to work through that. But we're not going to be monitoring their scholastic activity or performance outside of what they do at dispatch.
Okay. No, I like that there will be a liaison to have that communication between the department and the district. So I think this is an amazing program. So I thank you, Renee and Deputy Chief, for all that you guys have done. I can't wait to see if we can get some more dispatchers and more operators. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Deputy Chief and Ms. Ramirez. Great program, great suggestion. I think it's Commissioner Kane to expand it, to reach out to other school districts. Couple of questions. The training itself, is that being done on premises at the schools or will the students be transported somewhere else for the training?
The students will be getting trained at the Police Communications Unit.
Okay. And no cost to them, but they will be paid.
Yes, ma'am.
Another good point. And even though hiring by KCKPD is not guaranteed based on budgeting, and I was really amazed at all the certifications that they will get. Do those transfer in the event that they would come out and they can't be employed here? Could they take those certifications across the river, be our loss, but
Yes, it would.
they would be employable?
Most of them.
Most of them would. Okay.
All the emergency medical dispatch, CPR,
Mhm.
obviously, NCIC. There's another one that escapes me at the moment, but those certifications they can take with them to any communication center and have a head start.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Will it start in the fall semester? Is that the goal?
We're having some discussions with USD 500 about having students who are going to graduate in December participate. But our focus is going to be to do this starting in January so that it would so that they would finish the program about the same time that they're graduating from high school.
Perfect. I would just ask you to tuck in your memory bank that once you get a group through the semester-long training, that maybe we might like to meet one or two of them here with an update on how did it go after they come through the program.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. So what we're going to do is we actually have 4 different approvals. And before we do that, I'll just ask.
Renee Ramirez, I would just like to make one more comment on this. I think it's important to recognize that at the conclusion of this program, because this program is part of the high schoolers' curriculum in order to graduate. And at graduation, these students will be recognized by wearing a lanyard that shows that they were a participant of our class here and are able to take that skill set away from them, whether they're employed with us or not. So I think that's a huge achievement, not only for that student, but also recognizing the parents and the efforts that they've made for those achievements as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Madam Clerk, did we have comments from the public?
No comments were received.
Anyone online with their hand up to speak?
No hands raised.
Thank you. And anyone in person requesting to speak on the item? All right, Commissioner Kane, the first motion is.
Madam
for-
Chair, we do have a hand that has come up.
Okay, yes, please.
This is Rose Ellitz with Strawberry Hill Neighborhood Association.
Good evening. Please go ahead.
Hi, just had a quick question about the cost. Do you have an
Ms.
idea?
Ellitz,
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Oop, can you hear me? That's all right. Can you hear me?
Ms. Ellitz, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Let's see. You hear me now? Can you hear me now? No.
We are unable to
Hello?
hear Rose Eltz from Strawberry Hill. I apologize.
No worries.
And her hand has gone down, so perhaps that was an error. Commissioner Kane, the first motion will be for USD 202. There's a motion, and is there a second?
Markley, second.
Roll call, please.
Groneman. Kane. Markley. Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The second motion is for USD 203. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Groneman. Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is USD 204. Is there a second? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Groneman.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Last is USD 500.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, Groneman.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Renee and Chief Sims for putting the program together. All of those individual resolutions are adopted.
Commissioner Bynum, I just want to make a comment in case the IT team needs to take a look at something. Someone who is watching online indicated they could hear Rose talking online, but we couldn't hear her here. So I don't know if someone needs to take a look at that situation, but just wanted someone to know.
Thank you. I apologize to her for us moving on without her because we couldn't hear her. Are you staying put? The next item is the body worn cameras update. Thank you very much. I will turn it to you.
Hey, I have a slideshow prepared for the update on the in-car and body worn camera systems. Oh, now I'm ready to go. Okay. A quick overview of the hardware that we've deployed for the body camera system, and we'll be dealing with the in-car and body camera system first, and then moving on to some of the broader issues with the LPRs and the traffic cameras and things of that nature. The body worn cameras that we've deployed currently are the V300 body cameras. We have about 243 of them in service in some way, shape, or form. They're the ones that you see mounted on our officers. Most of them wear them right about here. It's the best place that we found to capture the best information available. We also have the 4 RE camera systems in our in-cars currently. 3 cameras per vehicle. They catch the front pano, and it has a look back camera in it as well. All the cameras capture video and audio at a pretty high resolution. We will be transitioning in the foreseeable future out of the 4 REs because that system is reaching the end of its life. And so they're going to be migrating us into a new system through Motorola. Happy to announce that we are currently fully staffed on this team for the first time in quite a while. We have 2 IS analysts and 2 program coordinators. The analysts are primarily involved with, I think I just flipped them as I was saying it. The information systems analysts do a lot of the hardware support. They also help out with the video, running the analytics, running the case guard software over them and preparing cases. But primarily, we have 2 people that will focus on working on the video and 2 that focus on dealing with hardware issues. We get a number of requests. I believe there are going to be some numbers that come up through Cora, the DA's office, our federal partners, and so on, and a lot of internal requests as well. At each station and at various points around, we have external Wi-Fi access points. Whenever anybody pulls in and parks a vehicle, it'll automatically begin to upload all the information out of the in-car camera. Passively, they don't have to dock it. They don't have to do anything. It just senses that the car is there and it begins. It's also common. What an officer will do is take their body camera and dock it inside the in-car camera, and it'll begin to upload both of those again without them having to go to a docking station. That would be something that they'd do if they were at the station working on reports or dropping property, something of that nature, which decreases the load in between shifts, because that's when, there's always a flurry of activity, and it's harder to upload from 8 vehicles at once, given bandwidth limitations are what they are, than when we can get it trickled in throughout the shifts. And then the docking stations, and obviously they have much more high-powered video audio redaction stations that they're using within the body camera and in-car camera shop because they're dealing with quite a bit of video data. 1.5 petabytes usable storage on our Isilon server. It's a network area storage system that I believe we're up to about 25 to 35% of capacity. This is a server that backs up. It's partitioned so it backs up to itself. So we have two unique silos of data that our body camera and in-car camera data is stored on. We don't use that server for very many other things. We've also started or about to start migrating some of our LPR data onto the Isilon server as well. We expect to be able to run this for 5 years, and we're in good shape. We're not expecting any problems. We are looking at additional backup solutions though, and we're still in the research phase of whether we're going to be looking for hardware or whether we're going to be trying to seek some kind of cloud-based solution. Storing over 300,000 files on it right now. End users, all of our officers who run a camera or administer a camera as a supervisor or some other level of leadership, they're all trained on what they need to know about how to make the cameras work, how to get video, how to stop video, how to pause, how to mute, all the standard operating issues that go with the camera itself, and how to make sure the camera is working. Obviously, that's important. And we do refresher training with them, both with regard to any changes or upgrades in the hardware, software, as well as the rules of the road as to when they have to have their cameras on and so forth. This is a policy that we revisit frequently, as you can imagine. It requires attention. It's something that we try to stay on top of. All of our line officers and other officers who are not necessarily always in a line job are required to wear a body camera when they're conducting those kinds of patrol operations. Community policing obviously wears them, SWAT, things like that. And we also have a bank of cameras that will be used by investigators when they go out and make field contacts and they want to use a body camera for their interaction, whether for investigative or oftentimes just because they're interacting with the public and they want to maintain that record. On the randoms, we're in this video data a lot, as you can imagine. But we also do random checks, a minimum of 1 check per month per officer. And that's done at the division level by a captain, usually by a captain, but by some senior sergeant or a ranking commander will get in a video at random and just view the interaction. I mean, obviously, if it's something like a drive across town where the camera was activated inadvertently, we'll pass that one. But we do want to watch an officer interact on an ordinary call for service that isn't going to be logged into evidence, because a large percentage of our calls are just going to be officers talking to people where there's no crime reported. There's, it's just how are our guys doing as far as, and gals doing as far as interacting with the public. And we follow Cora, obviously. So that is our standard of release to the public. And the chief of police also has the latitude and discretion to release videos. We keep, we record a lot of things, and some of it's as simple as a pre-shift inspection of a vehicle, or we'll just run a video test, and all of those are marked test. And then our video auditors will go through, double check that it was tagged properly, like it's not evidence. So they'll open it up, make sure that it is in fact a video that they can delete at the time, and then they'll delete those within a few days. Ordinary citizen contacts in which no case report's completed, no police report, a real police action is taken, and we've handled it at the scene. Those will kept for 120 days, and then you can see the table speaks for itself as far as the misdemeanor, CIT calls, traffic, and so on. Sex crimes, homicide, things of that nature, serious person felonies are maintained indefinitely. As I said, we we comply with core. We process a number of requests that come in from the public or from other non-law enforcement, non-prosecutorial entities that will reach out through the website. We coordinate with legal, and our IS analysts are very diligent about going through and making sure that they redact bystander information, PI, the personal personal identifying information, juveniles, obviously, and things of that nature. And that's assuming it is a recording that we will release. Sometimes they're tied up in an investigation. So we do everything through an encrypted cloud share. We're out of the business of burning these things to CDs or DVDs for the most part. Everything's gone handled through an online system. And that's how we share with all of our partners, with a very few exceptions. 350,000 videos recorded, it says, since 2021. I suspect that number is a little low because I think we're currently storing in the ballpark of 300,000 that are currently on the system. And that gives you an idea of how much sharing we do. Maintenance issues, just like anything else. When we got the V300s, they were a fairly new system and there were some debugging issues. So that number spikes a little higher than it seems. We had a problem with some batteries that accounts for a good chunk of the body cameras that we had to send back. Everything's been handled through the warranty process. We haven't had a cost associated with any of the repairs, at least any of them that would be, normal use. There may be a few out there that we broke that we were responsible for. And we're always growing the system. After the fact, so the WatchGuard body cameras are equipped with something called after the fact video, which means that when the camera is on, but you're not telling it to record, but it's powered up, it is recording. And it's recording video and it's recording sound. None of that is saved anywhere. It's just on a loop and it just keeps recording in that condition until it runs out of space and then it just starts to write over. What the after the fact does is if we have an incident that happens, whether it's something unexpected and the officer never had the opportunity to turn his or her camera on, or if it's something that they were expecting, but they failed to engage it or forgot or whatever, for whatever reason that camera didn't get turned on, we can go in through the after the fact program and pull the video from the camera for the segment of time in question. We're currently outfitting the new Bearcat with this body camera and in-car camera system. It already has a separate camera system in it, but this will tie it to our Motorola system, WatchGuard. We are in the process right now of getting our investigations, interview rooms, and interrogation rooms equipped so that they'll be moving from the current system with Exact Vision through Camdex, and now they'll be moving into the evidence stuck, the system that we now have all of our in-car and body camera evidence. It came out a little clunky, but we're trying to get all of our evidence video put into one, centralized in one data set. And of course, down the road, to what extent we're going to be able to integrate the CAD with our evidence library, things of that nature, so that they can communicate back and forth, automatically assign numbers, embed links, things of that nature, and connect it with our other, like the LPR system. We're on the verge of refreshing all of our body worn cameras. January 24 is when we expect to start rolling those out. So it's hard to believe. It seems like we just got these and we're looking forward to getting the next, they're going to be the same generation, but they're going to be fresh hardware. So by the time we reach the end of our current contract, we will all be equipped with fresh body cameras, fresh hardware. So, which leaves us in a good position as we decide what to do next. That's the body cameras and the in-car systems. Now we'll move on to the traffic cameras. I know you see these as you travel around town. They're not terribly discreet. We have access to a number of camera systems. Some of them are ours. Some of them belong to BPU or Operation Greenlight. We have a few partners with this, and I believe I have these listed on a further slide. Don't assume that because there's a stoplight that there's a camera. That's not the case, but we do have a fairly strong camera presence throughout the city. A lot of those cameras are fixed. They don't pan, tilt, or zoom. A number of those cameras include a license plate reader. A number do not. We try to deploy those based on things like call for service, crime data, and call for service data is what drives us what locations we're going to deploy those resources as they become available. As I mentioned, we've got about 27 intersections currently outfitted with license plate readers. That's the LPR tag. And we also have mobile license plate readers that are attached to some of our patrol vehicles so that they can go sweep particular areas, or they're also, when they're just out on patrol, they can post up at a location, and then the license plate reader will do its job and will alert them as long as they to whatever alerts they set it to. There's some discretion there. You can set alerts. It's a fairly flexible system. PTZs are obviously they're a wonderful tool to have, especially when you know that you're going to be dealing with a certain kind of activity or an event in a particular area. Then they give us the ability to really gather a lot of visual information and relay that to our people in real time. And as I said before, not all of the cameras have LPRs, not all the cameras have PTZs. So we have a number that are just traffic cameras, and we use those too in criminal investigations. And also we'll have the ability soon to set, as we're able to tie those feeds in through a smart box through one of our real-time crime center resources, we should be able to even set alerts within them to say, show me a white pickup truck. When it comes here, send me an alert. And so it's got some capabilities that we hope to be able to put into place fairly soon. Outside cameras that we have, I guess I don't have a list, but I can tell you that KU campuses, both of them are sharing with us Operation Greenlight. Kansas City, Missouri shares a number of their Genetech resources with us, the LPRs and the traffic cameras. NASCAR is up on our system. So we have partners that we share cameras with. And the gas stations, retail locations, and you get a feel for, how we have set up our camera sharing systems. I know you can read this for yourselves, but this last piece is where we're going next, which is where officers are going to be impacted more readily and more often by real-time intelligence, as people in our intelligence unit are at their consoles able to monitor camera activity at the same time that officers in the field are responding to the call. And there is a safety element to that. There's also it increases the likelihood of us being able to intercept and apprehend the suspect safely under those conditions. We already have that capability. We just don't have it 24/7. It's not as robust as it will be once we have our other intelligence platforms up and running. But we're already monitoring those cameras in real time with people most hours of the day from like 8 a.m. till 2200, 10 p.m. I included this as a final note. One of my first early incidents when I was in charge of East Patrol and South Patrol divisions was a break-in that happened at Sunfresh in the mall there. And one of our young intelligence analysts sat through and combed through. It takes a lot of human effort to get this done right now. We don't have a lot of automatic screening of this video data. And he went through hours of video and was able to identify a suspect vehicle, track it until it got an LPR hit, identify the license plate in it. And we figured out just based on that. That gave us the lead. Obviously can't tell you who did it, but that gave us the lead that caused us to discover who did that burglary. And it also ended up being a suspect who had thrown a crowbar at one of our captains outside of one of our patrol stations. So we've used this tool now for a few years, and its capabilities have increased during that time. All these that you see up here are recent. And we had a gentleman who robbed 4 of our local businesses. I gave their addresses in a string of armed robberies. He's armed with a handgun. We were able to use a traffic camera to get a good picture of him based on that because he always wore a mask, obviously, when he conducted the robberies. But we got a good traffic cam picture of him. And based on that camera capture, we were able to identify him, arrest him, and recover the firearm, clear all the robberies. I don't know a better way that we could have come to a resolution in those cases. Another fairly recent case, a grainy photo of a murder suspect vehicle was shared with our intel unit. This was not a public camera or a police camera. This was a citizen, because we always bangs on that point that we're not going to solve these things by ourselves. We need help. However, that citizen shared an image of a suspect vehicle with us, and then we were able to dive into our camera system, start retrieving additional video data, ultimately get an LPR hit on this murder suspect vehicle. It disappeared after that. They took it and they hid it behind a house in Kansas City, Missouri. It never moved. And so we never had any more LPR hits on it until we put out the flyer, and they were able to get it the very same day. LPRs, one of our officers, I told you that they could configure the alerts the way that they wanted. And she had set it up to tell her when this LPR at this location got a license plate read that went with this person, notify me, bang. So the LPR gets it hit. She gets the information, comes around the corner, catches him stepping out of a car, takes him into custody without incident. A great job, but another example of a good use of the system in real time. Finally, I included this one fairly recently in the West End, last week in the West End. One of our officers was late in the night. I believe this was off of a mobile read in the area of 78th and State. Set his alert to more broadly capture the information that comes in through the LPR system. And it flagged and said, hey, you just had a stolen car hit. Gave him the picture, the description, and he caught up to the car about 81st and State and was able to car stop it. And again, everybody was in custody. There was sufficient probable cause to book him for possession of stolen property and so on. And as you know, sometimes people have it's a stolen car, but these stolen cars are pretty heavy vectors in the crime world. They're always involved in committing additional crimes like burglary and so forth. So they're doing a good job. You know, those last two are not investigators or detectives or major case. These are just officers who run 911 calls. These are the people who respond when you pick up the phone, and they're using these systems to locate serious felony suspects in real time, or in this case, capture a stolen auto and so forth. So we're using it at all levels. And as time goes by, we're going to be more capable of using them in real time. That's the direction that everything is going right now. That concludes my presentation. I stand for any questions.
Thank you. That's an excellent bit of information. And it's amazing that the body worn cameras is what's going to be replaced in 24.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we just deployed them in like 2020.
2021. Yeah. I believe January is when we rolled them out to my station.
Questions, comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Thank you, Deputy Chief, to you and your department, and Chief Oakman for everything you do. It's our community. They see in the news what our police department does, and of course, when they do for a call for service. But I thank you for providing those examples of the everyday things, the everyday situations that our officers and our police department staff, how they're utilizing the technology that you purchase for the department. So I thank you for providing those examples so that the community can actually see that this technology is used every day. You know, we may not hear about it in the news, we may not hear about it for a call for service, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And so thank you for that. And thank you for all of the men and women who are serving and protecting our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Officer, do you have your body worn camera on?
I do not. I grab it.
Oh, no, I just was curious if you, well, why don't you step over and grab it?
I will. I'll go grab it.
Okay. Not that, you know, it's not 100% necessary, but it is, well, it's very interesting to me. And the data collection is, again, that's kind of mind boggling. And I don't know if there are other questions or comments while we wait for the officer. I didn't mean to make him go do that, but might be interesting just to see it. And I think I've seen it on officers. Commissioner Townsend.
Well, Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. While our officer is getting it, this is a good time to remind a lot of our community-based groups that our police department is ready and willing to come and make these presentations again to the groups as to how these body worn cameras are used and a lot of the technology, explain the technology the deputy chief just went over.
You know, I appreciate that because I was thinking in the last week, I have seen at one community group an excellent presentation from the gang unit. It was just fascinating. And then later that same week saw another presentation from your department on fentanyl, which was also excellent, scary, and eye-opening. So, I mean, there are a number of really important presentations that the department can come and bring to your groups. Go ahead and show us. Thank you.
Oh, this is the body worn camera. So this is the body worn camera. I'll power it up here so I can show you the difference. How we can tell if it's when it's on and when it's actually recording, when it's not. Give me just a second. Yeah. As Chief Sim said that, yeah, the best place to put it is absolutely right here because you're going to catch everything. We're almost there. Okay, so when we step out of our car, generally speaking, whatever you get, as soon as you turn your lights on, it'll automatically turn your body worn camera on as well, turn your in-car and your body worn camera on at the same time. If it's a call where you just pull over, you park on the side of the road, you don't turn your lights on for some reason, you just get out, push this center button right here. And now it's recording right now. It'll turn red right here on the front. And then also it'll tell us right here. And then to turn it off, it's as simple as hit that twice. And then we have the options of how to tag the event. So it'll prompt you to do so. You just scroll through till you find. Then you just push this side button right here. But now it's logged.
So what you just did is you're logging it in as sort of where you are, like what's the event that you're at.
This one I went to non-evidentiary since it's so we don't need to save it.
So is there a selection for like rowdy commission meeting?
There is, but there needs to be.
Okay. Other questions for chief or the officer? Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah,
for
you're
letting
welcome.
me get that.
Yeah, no problem.
Madam Clerk, any comments received by email?
No comments received.
Okay, any hands up online?
No hands raised.
Okay, and anyone in person? All right, that was information only, but it really is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and thank you, Sergeant Graves.
Okay, next item is, now that we've had the police department, we've got the fire department. And we have a resolution that is going to talk about purchasing property for a fire station, which is very exciting. So I guess I'll turn it to Chief Counsel Patrick Waters, please.
I'm actually, thank you, Commissioner. I'm actually going to turn it over to Chief Andrade and has a presentation. Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to talk about the station builds over the next few years before we get to station number 20. Station build priorities are due to age and structural stability. Today, our fire stations that you see on this list are 68 years old and are normally not compliant with NFPA standards or the ADA. Our ISO rating for one of the stations would help us out tremendously, and that's the new Piper station, building a third station out west. Stations 16 and 17 currently are underway, and we have an anticipation date of being complete in January of 2024. That one is at 55th and Douglas. And then station number 20 is the one we're going to discuss today about land acquisition. And station number 4 is the next priority. Both of those are township fire stations. They weren't meant to house 24-hour firefighters every day of the year. They were meant for volunteers. They are not ADA and they're not NFPA compliant. Our Amoresco study said this is one of the ones that we needed to get this station taken care of right away. You can see the cracks in the foundation and then the wood rot on one of the rafters that are outside. Now, this is the bathroom door that normally individuals get trapped inside because when they shut it, it does not close all the way. And so this is the next station that needs to be rebuilt. This map here is of where station number 20 is currently today is at 78th in Kansas. And you can see the X's on the map, and those are candidate locations. The GIS department has provided us those candidate locations based off the NFPA standard 1710 on a 4-minute travel time. It recommended all those locations to try to figure out what would be our best coverage for that area. The one that it's recommending is a half a mile down the road to 72nd in Kansas. This map here shows you the roof, shows you the rooftops for that 4-minute travel time for existing and for the proposed location. The lighter green along with the yellow are the current location, 4-minute travel time. The darker green with the lighter green attached to it is the 4-minute travel time when we move that fire station. It picked this location because the other candidate locations had a lot of hills, it had a lot of valleys, and then there's also property in that quadrant that we didn't want to take someone's home or business away from them. So this is the best location that the map is showing. This will give us more coverage area to the east, and it'll help out with the industrial area along with BNSF, which is the second largest railroad station in the United States. This map here shows you the 4-minute travel time for all the adjacent stations. Station number 6, 19's, station 2, and then the new station, station 16 and 17 down in the right lower quadrant. And I'll leave it open for questions.
Questions from the commissioners? Okay. Madam Clerk, any comments online?
No comments were received, no hands are raised.
Thank you very much. Anyone present in the 5th floor conference room want to speak on the item? It is an action item. So because we will purchase property, Chief Counsel, anything from you?
No, just making sure the commission understands that this will be the action item and that we will go out and purchase this property after passage of the resolution. So this will be the final action with respect to the property sale itself.
And I.
And yes, fast tracked to this Thursday. Is the request due to kind of the timing of.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Groneman, Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And then our last item tonight on our committee is Angel Ferrera with her staff for a Parks and Rec quarterly update. Thank you and welcome. And Angel, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, commissioners. Thanks for having us tonight. Just wait a few seconds for the presentation to get pulled up. Try to bring a little bit more enthusiasm to the night. So we're here tonight to just present our quarterly update. So we're just going to go over, we have a ton of stuff we could report on. But there's a lot of awesome things happening right now in Parks and Recreation. So we try to do our best to pick the highlights of the first quarter and also to, come before you with that information as well. I think if you're able to just please hit that arrow on the top right, they'll go in presentation mode. Yeah, that's it. The first, oh, sorry. I guess I can do it from here. Oh, wrong way. Working. No, there we go. Okay. See, it's good already. And then tonight with me, I also have Mrs. Shea Lockett. She's our Recreation Division Manager. And then also Mr. Matthew Zayas, our Fiscal Officer. So we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to let Shea kick us off tonight.
As Angel stated, we are here to provide the update for some of the amazing activities and projects we have going on in Parks and Recreation. We put together this collage just to highlight some of the events that our staff have been working very diligently on and offering to our community. I do want to note a couple of them. At the top in the middle, you have pictures from our very first all-girls basketball league that we held this year. It was hosted at Beatrice Lee Community Center. And we're really proud of our staff because most of our leagues have been co-ed because we just don't have enough to separate. But there was an interest. Community members came to us and requested that we specifically work with all girls. And we were able to host a 4th and 5th grade girls basketball league at Beatrice Lee. And we also have on here pictures from our Someone Special dance, which was hosted at Joe Amayo Community Center. And I do want to congratulate our staff because this event was sold out. We had people calling and requesting to come to the event, but the event was sold out. And those that attended did have a great time. And we also have had other projects such as our very first jugglers clinic. If you follow us on Facebook, those are some of the new and interesting events that we're trying to bring to the department. So we are trying to really engage the community at a new level and garnish interest in areas that we haven't always been able to highlight. With that, we have been working with Ballard and King and Clark and Anderson to look at our current community centers. And they are going to be offering recommendations for facility planning and operations in the future. We are looking forward as a department to what the next few years will look like for us and how we can offer quality programming to our community. We get a lot of requests to do various types of programming, but it's important that we look at the facilities that we have and our ability to offer that programming. So that is what this study is currently doing. The consultants did come to both Park Board and they met with all of our recreation staff to gather feedback and input for them and to hear from the people who work in the centers. And we have a draft report and we anticipate the final report will be to us by the end of this week or early next week. And the same token, just like our community centers, we also have one pool that's in our inventory that we oversee and manage, and that's Sparkwood Pool. And we have a signed agreement with Midwest Pool Management for the 2023 season. They, if you all recall, they were with us last year for the first time, and they did an excellent job with the hiring of lifeguards and overseeing and the training of those lifeguards to allow us to have a pool season last year. They are back on board for 2023 and have already started the recruiting process, have over 30 applicants for lifeguards, as well as have submitted offers for both the manager and assistant manager, and a lot of them are returning staff. We had an security contract solidified, but unfortunately, that security company had to withdraw that contract due to unforeseen reasons. So we immediately put that out for RFP. And that RFP closes this week, and we will be reviewing those proposals that we've received for security for Parkwood Pool. And we're also internally trying to work on other alternative measures as well to make sure that we're able to open the pool this May. And similar to our community centers, we are also doing an aquatics feasibility study. As we know, Parkwood has been around for a long time, and that means the maintenance of the pool, the conditions of the pool. So we are working with Water's Edge to conduct a feasibility study, and phase 1 is underway now. We're beginning phase 1, and that means they'll look at what it takes to maintain that pool and what the recommendations are for us to move forward as far as aquatics in our community. And then we just want to highlight a few things regarding aquatics. Last year, we had the Learn to Swim program that came and offered free swimming lessons to youth in the community for 2 weeks at Parkwood. That program is now titled the Joe Delaney Learn to Swim program, presented by GEHA. And they will be returning to Parkwood this summer through partnership with the Unified Government and Kansas City, Kansas Public School District. So as a part of summer school, both Quindaro and Carruthers Elementary Schools will be coming to Parkwood, and they will have swimming lessons. And we're also working to solidify the dates for the community swim lessons. So those who aren't enrolled in summer school, so they have an opportunity to receive those swimming lessons as well. And I think it's important for the commission to know the recognition that this program has received. We've received awards for the innovative approach that we've taken with our partnerships to be able to offer access to aquatics, which is often difficult in urban areas. And so the Unified Government received the Aquatics Innovation Award from the Kansas Parks and Recreation Association for the innovative Learn to Swim program that was offered. And that same program also received the Stronger Together Award from nonprofit Connect. And I do want to highlight that bottom picture is our maintenance staff that received that award at KRPA. They work diligently 7 days a week through our aquatic season to make sure that our pool is up and running, that our spray parks are running. They're the team that's behind the scenes. So we were glad that they were able to be present to receive that award on our behalf.
Now we're going to switch over to Parks Division and just give a few updates. Again, just some fun pictures. If you don't follow us on Facebook, here's my plug to follow us on Facebook. You've probably seen these photos there, but there's just a lot of amazing things going on in our parks. And so we like to capture those and just, think our quarterly update's a good time to kind of highlight some of those. What was big for us in this first quarter was opening day at Wyandotte County Lake. So you'll see a lot of pictures there and some other of the projects we have taking place as well. We'll start with the marina. So upon Denny's retirement last year, as many of you know, Parks and Recreation is running the marina this year. We are responsible for that operation. The hours of operation for the marina are currently Thursday through Monday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are closed for lunch. And then we are closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Again, we are running that with department staff. We've been actively working to get some seasonal help for that operation. We're just still kind of working through that process. As many of you know as well, last year we did put this operation out as through an RFP process, and we were just unsuccessful through that process. We have been working with county administration and the guidance we were given to put it back out as a notice of need in hopes to kind of expand the opportunities through that notice of need. So it will not only just include the marina operations, but it'll include, any proposals that anyone would want to submit on behalf of like Caw Point Park, the potential Rock Island Bridge project, and just some other opportunities as it relates to water and access and recreational activities. So that will be coming out soon as well. Another big project we have is the Boston Daniels Park project. We have been working closely with Boston Daniels Corporation for a few years now. And so it's really cool to see this project where it is this year taking off with the funding support behind it. So Boston Daniels has been working with Vireo, and they've conducted community engagement for the past several months. To the right, you'll see a conceptual design that Vireo put together through working with Boston Daniels and also through the community as well. Again, conceptual design. So these are just ideas that the community had, submitted for things they'd like to see for park improvements. So where we are at right now with this project is, so we will be moving forward and consulting with Vireo to continue the work that's being done for final design and then also project oversight. We do anticipate construction to begin late summer. Beautification pilot program. I want to touch base on this a little bit. So our department has been tasked with developing a beautification program for the city. As you can imagine, it's a pretty big undertaking, but we're very excited about it. We know it's something that needs to be done, and we do think that there are a lot of proactive approaches that we could start to take as an organization and also as a community. So where we are at with this project is we are also consulting with landscape architects Vireo as well to bring their best practice and also their knowledge about landscape architecture to this project as well. So we do see this as an ongoing initiative as the program develops and also as key initiatives are identified. So moving forward, what that will look like with Vireo is a series of meetings that they're going to be conducting with many UG departments, also probably community groups. They'll be pulling data from the community surveys as well, and identifying some of these key projects for the department to take an approach with.
Angel, I'm sorry. What's the scope of the program like? Anywhere and everywhere across the city or specifically within parks?
So that's a great question. That's part of what we are going to be working with Vireo to determine. When we were tasked with this, we realized that the scope is very large. So to work with Vireo to kind of take a more strategic approach Originally when we had submitted this, we have suggestions on focusing on maybe it's 5 to 6 entrances to the city and really doing a lot of work as it relates to beautification in those areas. And then also high trafficked areas across the city. So State Avenue, for example. So again, very broad approach. I've had some conversations with Mr. Fisher as well, wanting to get behind this initiative. Some other suggestions that we've had, and also I think were submitted as some preliminary ideas, was the idea of building a greenhouse internally, and then also being able to, the horticulturalists can build a lot of that up from the ground and start doing a lot of that in-house as well. So we are working with Vireo to find out exactly that, the scope of this project and the best way to approach this.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Commissioner Ramirez also has a comment at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. My fellow commissioners, if you can help jog memory, and to Angel, may I ask who tasked you with this? Because I don't remember us as a board saying that this is something we would like our parks. I mean, this is amazing. Yeah, we need a beautification throughout our parks and our community, but I don't think that was a discussion we as a full board had. So that's why I'm curious of who tasked this pilot program.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Ramirez. I know through last year's budget process, we were having some discussion about beautification. We had worked a little bit on that internally with Public Works and just kind of preliminary ideas. And so we did submit a request just based off of, what we were seeing from the community survey as it relates to some of those beautification items. So we did submit that request through the budget process with the intention that it would be a pilot program for this year. So just really trying to figure out, what does that look like? Could that look like for the organization and the community?
Okay, no, and like I said, I think we need this. It's amazing. We have amazing parks. And so if we can figure out ways, and not just our parks, but just in general of our environment and our landscaping of what we can do. So I was just curious, because thank you for jogging my memory of that. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And then, staff's really excited about this because we think that there's a lot of opportunities to be just more efficient in a lot of what we are expected to do as far as horticulture and beautification around the city. So we're really excited to go through this process. Everyone's favorite topic, mowing. Mowing season is upon us. We had our contractor start 2 weeks ago. So as you know, we mow a variety of properties across the county. You'll see there, we have it listed out. This year we have 6 contractors with us, on board with us. So I will say we have noticed kind of more interest from contractors, submitting bids. So that's great news. As you can imagine, we have a ton of parcels that need to be maintained and mowed. So making sure that, we've got contractors that are willing to do the work and committed is something that, we've worked really hard over the last 2-3 years to, build that interest up. And then I will say too, that staff also plays a large role in mowing. So we have our own in-house team that, spends most of the spring and summer mowing. You've probably seen this flyer on the right. It's on our website as well as our Facebook page. You'll start seeing it. So, this is always kind of good to share if you have citizens in your districts that have questions as it relates to mowing. This is just kind of a, quick glance at, who does what or what we mow. And then also at the bottom, there's good contact information that they can call if needed. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit about what he's been up to for the past few months as well.
So we don't take for granted the fact that Wyandotte County taxpayers have entrusted us with significantly more taxpayer dollars than they did in 2022. And we know that, us being able to give back to them is multifaceted. One is obviously implementing those programs and projects, and 2 is being transparent and showing them how we're doing it. So I've had the opportunity to work with our team and with Park Board for the past couple months, and it's been great. A lot of what's on this slide just kind of goes through that. But we've worked with capital projects, budget, and then we've also gotten a lot of feedback for what they would like to see as a part of the CMIP in 24. And that's a lot of what you're seeing in the center there. So again, engagement has been big. We've made an intentional approach to provide Park Board with departmental knowledge and then break it down so it's more digestible. Really excited about how our discussion of the capital projects for 2023, as well as what happened in 2022 and our 2023 budget preview kind of led into the 2024 capital project planning workshop. In March, at our March meeting, we put together a spreadsheet based upon ideas that I collected from Parks Board members throughout February, and we were able to put that together, bring it back, and really work through everything that they suggested. And a lot of it aligned really well with the Parks Master Plan that we created in 2017. So that was amazing. During March, after the meeting, we as staff went back and got quotes for a lot of those projects and brought that back in April. So we had another really good discussion. And yeah, it's just incredible what our Park Board was able to provide and all the great ideas. So very happy about that. And then we were also able to put together a year-end report for 2022. And this is great. It's online. Definitely check it out if you haven't already, but it highlights all the programs we did in 2022, a lot of the capital projects, a lot of our fiscal analytical data. We were able to utilize participation numbers for the program, and it really came together well. So I'm just really excited about what our team has been able to provide to the public to date. And we will continue to do so and follow up on the 2023 capital projects in future quarterly meetings.
And that's all we have tonight for the first quarter update. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane.
Can you go back to telling our story? What a story. It says Kensington Park, Boston Daniels Park, Ruby Park, Call Point Park, pickleball. I don't see anything here about a park and pipe.
Correct. Yes, there is no mention of a park in Piper. We are working on that project, as you know. So it definitely is in the works. It's taking a little bit more time than we expected.
We had a meeting with another entity, and I'd like to find out where that's at in the process. And I think we need to continue. I think it's great to fix up the parks and make them look nice and do all that stuff. But if you haven't got a park, you don't have one to go fix up and where people can walk around.
I have a question with regard to that. So we did allocate funding several years ago. I'm not misremembering that, am I? The funding has been allocated. Is it also true that the location is selected?
So yes, correct, Commissioner. Funding was allocated and it's still in that designated line item for the capital project. So originally we had been looking at the location next to the new fire station on Hutton Road. So, we've done a lot of work with Benish on just taking a look at that land there. It's less than 2 acres. There's a lot of challenges with that land. And unfortunately, it would take a lot more funding just to get the land in a place to where you could, really build a nice park on there. And we have been working with Commissioner Kane, who's made some great introductions with, some community partners. And, we're just kind of trying to explore some other options right now. And so we're still working through those conversations, but we are hopeful.
So I would really look forward to, hearing about if a different site gets selected. And I agree that's a tough location beside.
Well, it'd be a waste of money.
Yeah.
For one, and then two, regardless, it's going to take more than $250,000 to make this work. So we're going to have to put some more money towards it. And if we can work with this community partner, and to be honest about it, these folks have already got outside groups willing to put the equipment in there. We just need to find a place.
Okay.
So I'm not giving them, I'm giving them a hard time, but I'm not giving them a hard time because they worked their butts off to get where they're at. We just need to get it going.
Okay, so we're getting closer.
We're better than we were in the last 3 years.
Good. And obviously, I'll do whatever I can to be helpful. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Just as always, thank you to our Parks Department for everything that you do. We know you don't get the exact funding you would like to have to be able to provide, but you do with what you get, with what you have. And I always bring up the story of when you received those grants, that grant money, and you did a lot with the money that you were given. So it shows that if we provide parks with the funding, they will do the work. Parks and Rec always has a special place in my heart. That's where I started working and before I was in my current job. So just thank you for what you do. Thank you for listening to the community. I'm glad that we're doing the analysis study. That was something, the subcommittee, my subcommittee was really in support of and really wanted. And so it's good that we're going to have concrete, hard data to be able to make decisions on.
Mm-hmm.
So just thank you for everything and thank you for your dedication to the community.
Thank you.
It's from our commissioners, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to our park staff, Ms. Ferrera, Ms. Lockett, and Mr. Zayas. I want to go to the Parkwood pool slides that you've got to just be easy to talk about those in front of when they're up. The aquatics. RAS. Oop, there we go. And I'll start from the end to acknowledge those individuals who were recognized for the work they do with our aquatics program and the upkeep of that pool. There every year, 3-4 times a week before it opens, and what the pool looks like in terms of the water clarity and everything is always great. That's very important. So there's a health aspect there. We think about in terms of just fun at the pool, but we're looking from a different perspective as well. Wanted to highlight again the fact that Midwest Pools is going to be back with us this year. We appreciate their partnership and the way things were handled last year, but I don't want people to miss what Ms. Lockett said. Aside from the number of the adequate number that we need of lifeguards, which I'm glad to hear the lifeguard issue will not be a problem this year. However, there is another very important essential element, and that is security. So as we're sitting here tonight, we're still awaiting responses to the request for a proposal for a contractor. As Ms. Lockett said, we had one who had committed to working with us again. It was the same company who was there this past season, but business requirements on that contractor's situation forced them to close. So they are no longer business, and staff acted immediately to outreach. And I have spoken with several people. I know our sheriff has talked to several people who are putting in. I think the RFP closes this week. The 26th days on my mind. It's either 23rd, 26th. So do you all have any idea at this time how many may have put in That's okay if you don't. I guess the main thing is it
Yeah.
closes in. So.
We do not, and
Okay.
I don't know that they'll know that until they open the bids on Thursday, but I do know that purchasing, they've done an excellent job on helping us get this word out. They, as of Thursday of last week, they had sent it out to 18 plus potential businesses that offer security services. So
And I know I've spoken with at least one contractor who has extensive experience and been there in the past for us. So we are optimistic that need will be taken care of, but I can't underestimate or downplay the importance of us having security. That is a vital step that needs to be handled. So, but we're all committed to seeing the pool reopen again for a great splash summer. The other thing that Ms. Lockett talked about, I want to go back to, was the feasibility study having to do with the pool. Where is that on there? Thank you. Okay, and with that, let's see. That is concentrated on the current setup of Parkwood and what it needs to continue on. Talk a little bit more about that. And I know we've talked about this before because to do that, there's a phase 2 plan, correct?
Yes, so we are currently working through phase 1, which is the visual facility assessment. And what that entails is industry professionals in the aquatics industry will come and take a look at Parkwood. They'll look at the filter buildings, they'll look at our deck, fencing, all of our equipment, our treatment systems, our pipes, and all the entire site. And they will develop recommendations and priorities for improvements, as well as provide cost estimates for what it would take to meet those recommendations for us.
Okay, great. Do you have an anticipated end date for that, for phase 1 to receive that information?
So that it's phase 1 is broken into 2 parts. They have to look at it prior to the pool being filled, and then they also have to examine it while it's in operation.
Okay.
So it won't be until after the aquatic season begins. Probably, if I had an estimate, I would probably say closer towards the end of the season that we will receive a final report.
Okay. And then what's set up for phase 2? And this is what is very critical to addressing a lot of the situations that we've heard from the community about what a new aquatic center would look like. Wood Park would be the appropriate place for it. I'd be ADA compliant. How big should it be? So, we're looking forward to the analysis of one, because I wanted to see it done all at the same time. But the professionals said, well, to know where to go in phase 2, we need to have this information that phase 1 will supply. So could you talk a bit about what to expect in phase 2?
yes, great question, Commissioner Townsend. And I think that, well, I know, like you said, what we get from phase 1 is probably going to drive a lot of that conversation. You will see us coming back to this standing committee for guidance and feedback to determine, where we should go with phase 2. The way that we've looked at it now with Water's Edge is there's kind of 2 ways to approach it moving forward. Of course, we want to do the phase 1 to get that initial data, but phase 2 could look like, if the city wanted to continue to make investments at a higher level at Parkwood, what does that look like? So for example, if you wanted to add more water slide features and some of those things you might see at a water park, that could be a phase 2 option. If the city decided, no, based on the data, we'd like to explore, moving forward with a new facility, new location, then that would be more of your aquatics master plan. I also do want to note along the way with that process, we've also included in their scope for them to take a look at our splash pads. Because we do know that those are highly used in the community and low maintenance. We don't have to staff them. So they'll be taking also a look at our currently 3 splash pads, and then also this, recommending if the city wanted to move forward with installing more, where would those locations be best at? That makes sense.
Oh, it does. Thank you. But just so we're clear, we're not talking about not having for more splash pads, a pool, because we have to train some Olympians from this area. So look forward to the completion of phase 1 and then phase 2. And the rate this year is still $1 for entrance to the pool, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. With respect to Boston Daniels Park. Okay. A lot going on. Been in contact with members of the Boston Daniels family who comprise a lot of the Boston Daniels corporation. So can you talk about the impact of these changes on our budget? Because a lot of this will be privately funded, correct?
Sorry. So we were given $150,000 through last year's budget process. So we have that funding out of the Parks and Rec budget. We will also be using some CDBG funding for this project as well. And then there are a few community partners who have interest in also funding the project. So it'll be a mix of a few various buckets.
Okay. All right. Do we have a start date for those improvements, or that's still being worked? Oh, it says late summer. Okay. 2023. Okay. And lastly, I just wanted to recognize the mowing program and what goes on each summer. District 1 is challenging in the number of vacant properties and privately held properties with non-compliant problems. And so I want to commend Parks and Rec and also Public Works for when they get the call diving in, to correct these eyesores to other members of the community when they see this. I can't thank them enough and just wanted to recognize them for that. So we've got another summer. I have to say, this job has made me a bigger fan of winter than I ever thought I would be. But we've got people who do a great job, and I appreciate them and wanted to recognize them. And also last year, it's hard to believe it's been almost a year that these same personnel were involved in clearing the path to the Quindaro Historical Site from the overlook all the way to the river. It looks like a different area now. So I want to thank them again for that and for what Parks and Rec does every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Clerk, are there comments received from the public on the item?
No comments were received and no hands are raised.
Thank you very much. Anyone else present on the 5th floor? Well, I think I can speak for everyone on this committee and thanking you for what you do every day. It is amazing. There is no question of that. I stand ready to help you with any project where you think my help could be valuable. I'm sure I speak for everyone on that as well. And with that, we'll thank you for your presentation. Look forward to more information from you as it comes around. You have a lot of exciting things going on. And with that, Mr. Groneman, thank you very much. Our meeting is concluded and I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All righty, roll call on our motion to adjourn, please.
Roll call, Groneman.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Our meeting is adjourned. I will hand this to Commissioner Angela Markley to chair Administration and Human Services.
All right, team. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. When speaking, be sure and speak directly into the microphone so that all comments are heard and the record of the meeting is accurate. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of the meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public also will have an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the 5th floor conference room of the municipal office building. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Kane. Johnson. We have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Bynum. Markley.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
There are no revisions to tonight's agenda, and there are no minutes to approve. We are moving right along to our committee agenda, item number 1, which is the short-term rental uses ordinance, which we have discussed previously in this committee, and Gunnar Hand is here to present. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. As way of introduction to this item, I would just like to say that the short-term rental process has been going on for at least the last 6 months plus in earnest. We've had multiple public engagement opportunities as well as internal UG reviews. It's been at the City Planning Commission a couple of times, this standing committee a couple of times, and what is before you this evening, staff believes is a balanced approach that still prioritizes actively owner-occupied short-term rentals. This comes to us from the Planning Commission earlier this month with a recommendation of approval. I will take the time to note there are some unsubstantive typos that we would still like to fix. So there will be a slight change between potentially what happens this evening and maybe what we are requesting to fast track to this Thursday. Just as a way of example, for instance, there's some formatting issues that got cleaned up by legal recently. And then there's a place in our administrative review where we say special use permit. We shouldn't have, it should say administrative review. So small things like that, nothing substantive. There are still things I think potentially worth discussing this evening. I know that we have a few people here this evening as well who would like to provide testimony, and we're eager to have those conversations accordingly. We did our best in this draft to isolate those areas of contention to make it as easy as possible to continue to move forward. So if we don't like a piece, we can remove it and the rest can move on, for instance. Now that depends on what the piece is still, but we believe that's how we've crafted this in order to be as flexible as possible to move forward. Again, I would just note that we are asking for this to be fast-tracked. Any substantive change that were to occur tonight would trigger, and if it were hypothetically to move forward to Board of Commissioners this 30, would trigger a requirement of a supermajority of the Board of Commissioners to approve it on the 27th. So with that, we do want to go over the full presentation with you all just as a matter to get caught back up to speed. I've asked Mr. Farley to move fast, so if we could have maybe 10 more minutes of your time to go through it again, then we would open it up to questions. So with that, Mr. Farley.
Mike Farley, Ordinance Study Specialist with the Department of Planning and Urban Design. Again, just to review, short-term rentals in one way or another have existed within Wyandotte County throughout its history, but it's only been in the last 10 or so years that the rise of Airbnb and other third-party platforms have allowed private homeowners to more actively take a role in the short-term rental market. And in response to that, in the last several years, the UG and the planning department specifically has made steps to address the rise in short-term rentals, including creating a special portion of the special use permit application in order to streamline the common issues that come up with short-term rentals, and then moving on since November, trying to address short-term rentals with more robust and clarified regulation. The current short-term rental process has to go through, every short-term rental, I should say, has to go through a special use permit. Owner-occupied properties are in a way incentivized over non-owner occupied properties, as you can see from this slide. owner occupied properties are allowed for up to 2 years upon first short-term special use permit application, then 5 and 10 years, while non-owner occupied properties have to can only go up to a year and then can follow that 2, 5, and 10-year route. So even from the beginning, we have been creating incentives and ways that owner occupied properties can have a little bit of a leg up in the short-term rental market and process. We also, as well, have been using third-party programs, host compliance, in order to track short-term rentals that are being advertised throughout the county to get a sense of what we are missing versus who's coming in and applying. This is actually a snapshot that we took earlier today, showing the number, the overall rise in the last year of short-term rentals being advertised, as well as all types of rentals, and then the numbers that are reflecting how many active and new short-term rental advertisements have been found online through host compliance scraping, through various third-party websites. Additionally, just showing the distribution of advertised short-term rentals throughout the county, with particular emphasis on the Strawberry Hill and Rosedale neighborhoods, where we see the highest concentrations. But as you can see from this map, there are short-term rentals that are found throughout different neighborhoods throughout the county. So this is not just something that we are seeing in 1 or 2 neighborhoods, but something that we want to address throughout the unified government. And again, in our process, we have reached out to community members. We have presented for different neighborhood groups at different public meetings, and have also done research to get comparable short-term rental regulations from other KC Metro municipalities, as well as cities throughout the United States, in order to get an idea of how different people are, different municipalities are addressing the problem with short-term rentals, or addressing how to regulate them best. And so through all that, we have come up with 4 key considerations. Again, the tenancy model, just making sure that we can find a balance between home ownership, long-term rentals, and short-term rentals, addressing the use of enforcement, both the limitations from some zoning enforcement officers that we've addressed previously, as well as ensuring that enforcement is not the first tool used, but rather that we create regulations that offer incentives for people to comply. Also addressing the balance in neighborhoods, making sure that all changes in neighborhoods will be incremental, and we'll strike that balance between private property owners using their property to a greater use, while also maintaining opportunities within the neighborhood for neighbors to know what's going on within their community. And lastly, addressing economic development, finding that balance between the use of short-term rentals to revitalize neighborhoods, while ensuring that investment will go back to the neighborhood itself. So as Director Hand mentioned before, we have come up with what we call an owner-occupied occupancy preferred approach to short-term rentals, using all of the staff expertise, best practice, peer state comparisons, and lots of community input. So some of the changes that we've made, we have actually addressed, we have actually defined what a short-term rental is. In this case, a rental for less than 30 days. We have also defined in this case for our purposes, what a homeowner and an actively occupied property is, as well as a street block, which is the unit that we are using to define and limit concentrations of short-term rentals is going to be a street block. Additionally, we've addressed how short-term rentals can be used by zoning district and by building typology. There are, for the most part, they are allowed in every district that allows for residential uses, as well as all building typologies to various degrees. So there are limitations put in place on how many units within a multifamily building would be allowed. And again, that goes into addressing density by parcel, and then addressing density by the street block. We want to emphasize that no more than 25% of any parcels on a street block could have a short-term rental special use permit. And then lastly, we are codifying several processes as well that we have engaged in the last several years through the special use permit process, requirements that we have found that will be helpful to for safety purposes, making sure that there are up-to-date home inspections, codifying the length of term for these special use permits, addressing how legal non-conforming special use permits will be incorporated into this code, and then ensuring that there are performance standards for both for short-term rentals that are both done through administrative review and special use permits, including the maintenance of a business license, property owner responsiveness to noise and parties, and addressing neighborhood characteristics, including density. So lastly, we would just like you for your consideration to I guess the things that we want to point out here is that we are identifying changes to the ownership and the applicant. We have addressed legal non-conforming status of existing short-term rentals that might be affected by this limit, this 25% concentration limit that we are suggesting, and then clarifying the application submission requirements and performance standards that we have done through the special use permit process over the past several years. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I want to thank you for everything you've done on this. I know this is a very hot button issue with Rosedale, my district. I've talked to a lot of Rosedalians, talked to RDA about this issue. I have no problem with the ordinance itself as it's written and everything. The issue that I have and I cannot support is the 25% density requirement. Because before the original was 1 per block and now it's 25%. And I did some research of now using our potentially new definition of what a street block is. I just picked a couple streets out from Rosedale just to give some perspective, and I counted on both sides of the road. One street was Eaton between 41st and 42nd. There's 30 homes in 10 total, and that would be 25% would be 7.5 homes would be allowed for STR. 46th Avenue between Fisher and Booth, there's 27 homes, 6 homes would be eligible for STR. And 39th between Furry and 9th Street of 18 homes would be 4 or 4.5. That's a lot for a city block to be allowed for commercial purposes. And so I don't know if I would like to change it back to 1 per block. I don't know if that's a substantive change to the ordinance, but I would like to go through the public hearing before I ask to make any changes, but I would like to change that 25% back to 1 per block.
This is Gunnar Hand, Director. Thank you. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. Thank you for that comment. As you stated, the original staff recommendation was 1 per block. The City Planning Commission felt that that was arbitrary and would prefer a percentage. And so at their direction, staff changed it to 25%. If this committee and then the Board of Commissioners thereafter, full Board of Commissioners thereafter wanted to change it, it would be a substantive change. It would require a supermajority. And again, this is one of those sections where we've isolated the language in a motion tonight. If that was the change, hypothetically, you could change it back to 1 pretty easily. But again, it would require a supermajority. Staff would not have an issue with that change.
Commissioner Bynum.
Commissioner, did you have more? I'm sorry.
I guess not more to say, but more direction from the chair of when the appropriate time for me to make that amendment change.
I would say we'll want to have, I think we have some members of the public here, so I would say let's do it when we do the motion, and that will come probably after our public comment.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, I apologize. I forgot to mention my open room remarks. The other thing that the Planning Commission motion directed staff to do was to come back to the Planning Commission, if approved by the Board of Commissioner, in a year for kind of like an annual report and any recommendations to tweaks. So we understand that this is a moving target. It's a living document, and I think that would I think that would also speak to, not just doing something now and then moving forward, right? Like this is us coming back. So there is there's additional life to this effort.
Mr. Hant, a question on one of your slides. The slide heading is address land use. And then two just general questions. Under the addressed land use, it says density by parcel. And it says only one special use permit is allowed per parcel, but there can be multiple short-term rentals within a single parcel, depending on zoning and building type. So those two things are not the same thing. I don't understand that sentence.
So we wanted to address special use permits by parcel. So if there was for instance, multifamily building that was one building, one parcel, but two short-term rental units, you could address that with one SUP because that's one property owner. So that's typically, we just wanted to match basically how we do other land entitlements, even though there's a possibility. Doesn't happen often. Again, we have like one instance where we have two short-term rentals in one building.
Okay.
We just didn't want to do two short-term rentals. It also brought up a conversation where there's an instance where we have kind of like a row of townhomes that are all short-term rentals, and we package those into one SUP. And so we wanted to make sure that we were being consistent, which is why we felt compelled to address it specifically in this amendment. So that guy who has one SUP, I think we would let live on to honor the way we handled it previously, not changing the way his approvals move, or in this instance, renewals would move forward. But for future people, we would try to consolidate that to make it easier for everybody.
And thank you for that explanation. And that, I'm sorry, unfortunately adds another question in my mind, because if I'm going to operate a short-term rental, what other processes or fees do I pay to the unified government in order to do that? Is there an annual licensure?
This ordinance requires all special use permits for short-term rentals to also get a rental license.
Oh,
Excuse me, a business license. Sorry.
okay.
I keep saying that. I keep saying that wrong. It's a business license. A rental license is only for long-term rentals, and we didn't want to conflate that and make it more complicated by adding short-term rentals, which is a different thing. We had enforcement issues in the past where people would get a rental license and say, I'm not a short-term rental. See, I have a rental license. I go for 30 days. And then when we weren't looking, rent it for 29 days, right? So, or 1 day or whatever. And so they were playing the game, and we tried to eliminate that.
That does help me, because if I had, for example, a fourplex and I wanted to operate each of those units as short-term rentals, I'd get one special use permit, but then I'd get 4 business licenses. Would that be correct?
One business license. Because it would be, in that scenario, it would be one business operating all 4.
But in your townhome scenario where it's 4 different parcels. Thank you. Okay. I just thought we need to be doing something
Sure.
that helps with, number one, the work that has to go into regulating all of this, and then also does actually help to regulate it. Some kind of hammer that we can hold, because we've all heard our share of, unfortunate stories about some of what has occurred in the short-term rentals. Just two general questions. The updated ordinance here, what issues or challenges would you say the updated ordinance solves for, and what efficiencies are we going to gain by updating the ordinance? And that's it for me. Thanks.
You want to take that first?
Yes, Mike Farley, Department of Planning and Urban Design. I would say the efficiencies that we'd be gaining through this ordinance would be allowing for any owner occupied property to go through a much quicker administrative review process rather than going through the 90-day special use permit process with public meetings, neighborhood meeting requirement, all that. So that should incentivize people to be able to use their own property while they are living there and still operating a short-term rental in one way or another. And forgive me, Commissioner Bynum, your second part of your question was. Right, okay. And I would say one of the issues that this will be solving will be addressing the concentration concerns that we have in certain neighborhoods, but also throughout the county. I want to emphasize that there is a maximum number of short-term special use permits that can be issued per street block, which is 25%, which is technically down from the theoretical 100% special use, permits per street block that could have been issued now. But that is also not a maximum. Each of these still have to go through the special use permit process and approval by the Board of Commissioners. So in that way, and we are also codifying neighborhood characteristics, which include density and concentrations as one of the factors of neighborhood characteristics that can be considered. So there are other ways to address density concerns on top of the hard 25% maximum that we're imposing.
I would just add on top of that, Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design, very often when we have people opposed to short-term rentals, it was just that, I'm opposed to the short-term rental. And as we all know, it's you can't just say we recommend it now because of opposition, right? Public opposition. So we built language in the ordinance that gives decision makers grounding based on neighborhood character and context to make their determination about short-term rentals. It did not exist before. The vast majority of what we're doing with this ordinance is codifying what we've been doing for years. So giving us the legal standing to continue to do that and move forward.
And to that point, does it help us? Does it gain us any handle on being able to track down and require compliance from those who aren't currently coming in to get their special use permit? Because your data says 1 in every 3 has a permit. And so does it help in that way at all?
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. Our hope is that it drives more people to conformance because it's actual ordinance now, right? 2, we've gone through this process and it's a relatively public process. We've gotten some media coverage. So in that in and of itself, I think raises awareness. So we hope that drives some folks. And then based on some comments we've received in the past, I think we're organizing right now kind of a zoning blitz where if and when this ordinance is passed, we'll kind of hit pause. And for, probably a month, we'll go out to all 166 properties. We have door hangers telling them that you need an SUP. We'll follow up those door hangers with any notices of violation. Mr. Farley and others at the Neighbor Resource Center are going to start to stand up all the, what you have in front of you is policy, right? That's not protocol or procedures, right? So we'll be standing up you have a draft of the application, but there's other forms and a renewal looks different than a new one. And so all that stuff will kind of start to play out over the months following a decision on this. But the short of it is, I think we're always going to have an enforcement issue with short-term rentals. I would say everybody is always going to have an issue with short-term rentals in this world.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. One last, I guess it won't be my last comment, but exactly. What have you seen from the success in other cities, other jurisdictions around the country of reaching out to these third parties, Vrbo, Airbnb, and asking them, and I know they're private companies, they can do what they want, but taking down the advertisements, the listings of those STRs that are not in compliance with ordinance. And if you've seen somewhat of success, is that a tool that we can add to our box?
Mike, do you have any updates on that? I have something if you don't. Go for it. I mean, and Michael pile on because he did most of that research in other jurisdictions. I think the truth is that the ordinances you're seeing right now are also most jurisdictions beta testing what they think will work and not work, right? We're all in that first stage of trying to figure this out, certainly in this region. In fact, we've kind of jumping ahead with the progress we've made. Most people are still lacking. I think the city of Parkville has adopted one. Kansas City, Missouri, I believe, just did or is very close to adopting one as well. But when you look elsewhere across the nation, it's the same thing. They're all kind of in their first generation of ordinances and then beta testing them and see if it's coming out. I think the problem we have is, one, we're a smaller than most major metropolitan cities, right? So even if Kansas City was a tier 2 city, they have problems. We're going to have more problems. So the short of it is we can keep trying. I think host compliance has a mechanism by which they can help, but you're basically playing whack-a-mole, and I would argue that that is a waste of staff time. And so the focus should be on making sure the people who are going through the process are doing it right, trying to get as many people into that process, and then doing our best on the back end and enforcement. Having Airbnb and Vrbo go on their site on a daily basis and scrub it, I think, is an ongoing relationship that we just don't have the manpower for right now. But it's something we will certainly look into. I don't think we've actually asked that question of host compliance.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I understand. I know, as you said earlier, this ordinance is going to be a moving target as we go. And as you know, and as you said, it's happening throughout the nation as well. All cities and jurisdictions are trying to, I don't want to say battle this, but they're trying to figure out a way because of how much STRs and that market has grown exponentially. And so we're trying to play catch up. And so I appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do and try to make sure that the ordinance that we have, yes, and allows people to do that, but also to make sure that we're protecting the character of our neighborhoods. So I thank you for that.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Good evening, Mr. Hanna, Mr. Farley. I did review the proposed changes. I just can't remember if they address concerns that we constantly hear when someone comes for proposal, and that's parking and noise. Now, I know parking is addressed kind of on a singular basis when the applicant comes up and your department will say no more than X number of cars or whatever at this house. But what about noise complaints or a methodology to keep the owners accountable? Does it address that really? And if not, could you remind us what the options are for neighborhood residents to deal with these complaints? And if necessary, get the permit rescinded.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Farley, Department of Urban Planning and Design. There are several places within the code that noise and other sort of disturbances are addressed. So we are codifying the fact that the property owner would have to put up contact information within their home for them or whoever their property manager is if there is issues. It is also incorporated into the neighborhood characteristics. I guess how I put it, neighborhood characteristics factor that we are codifying, that responsiveness to disturbances from the property owner or relevant property manager, as well as any other sort of issues, police calls to the property related to the tenants, that would all be, that can all allow the Board of Commissioners to take that into account now when hearing cases or renewals.
And how would that be tracked, really? How would your office know that at house 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Party Lane Way, you're getting these perpetual complaints about a particular short-term rental?
So we have a internal tracking system in the UG called Acela. Not everybody's on that server, but we do have another platform where we can also access police calls. And so for all staff reports, administrative and those that require planning commission and board commissioner approval, if you've noticed, we've made some changes to our staff reports. They all include a kind of code update section that tracks violations, police calls, building permits, and any other action that's happened on the property as part of it. So we have that information. We're readily available, and so we can track that every time we do a review accordingly. I would also pile on to what Mr. Farley said. We specifically say you can't have parties. And again, violation history is a factor that we will review in renewals or in new ones, but most likely in renewals. And that could trigger administrative to become an SUP, or that could become a factor by which we would recommend denial of any renewal of an SUP. So it's very much in there.
Okay. And anytime, even if this code, or even though it sets out renewal times at certain intervals, let's say the owner is at the interval where it's been a renewal for 10 years, if enough complaints come in, it can still be rescinded, right?
Yes, I apologize. I forgot to answer that piece of your question, but yes, there is already existing a way by which the Board of Commissioners can rescind a special use permit. And then at administrative, it doesn't require the Board of Commissioners. Administratively, we can pull that permit based on any complaints that we feel rises to the level to remove it. So we can pull that administratively and you all can move forward. Now, the process to go through and rescind an SUP isn't fun, but it's there.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your work on this. Yeah, it'll be trial and error for a while. But at least we've got something to work with. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments at this moment from the commission?
Madam Chair, if I may, there was a couple of things I wanted to address. And I apologize, I forgot to mention this in my opening remarks as well. At the last meeting, we were asked if we could look into the way the taxes are parceled, if predominantly short-term rentals are in single-family homes and residential neighborhoods. By turning it into a short-term rental, it is effectively becoming a business. Does that change their classification by which they are taxed? The answer is no. There is a state statute specifically that addresses bed and breakfasts, but that definition includes short-term rentals. So no, it does not change the tax rate. The statute was basically written and advocated that way, as we understand it from Mr. Willard's synopsis for me here, was basically that would the taxing that happens on the use of the property as a short-term rental or as a bed and breakfast is where the municipality can exact their pound of flesh, if you will, for that use. And then the base taxing stays as the base taxing. Now there's a limit to that, but that limit actually matches our limit of 7 people. And I think it's 5 bedrooms before it becomes a different classification that the state reviews. So those actually leveled out quite nicely in the ordinance. So if it's a use that's bigger, it gets triggered anyway, and it's something else anyway.
All right. I'll ask the clerk if any comments were received from the public.
No comments were received.
Are there any hands up online from anyone from the public?
We do have some hands up. Our
Okay.
first speaker is Donna with Cernich Group.
Donnie, you'll be given up to 3 minutes to make your comments. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Donna, you'll need to unmute. We still show you're muted.
Shall we try someone else and loop back?
We can. Our other speaker is Rachel Russell.
Rachel, can you hear us? You'll be given up to 3 minutes to make your comments. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, Rachel Russell, Kansas City, Kansas.
I
Good
believe we're still having the same technical issue.
All right. Well, we're going to then ask if there's anyone in the room who wants to make comment. If there's anyone who can try to resolve that issue in the meantime, we'll try to loop back once more at the end. Anyone appearing in person who'd like to address the item, approach the podium, state your name and city of residence for the record, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to make your comments. Welcome.
Oh, hello. Beth Cyperson, 4535 Cambridge. I'm in the Spring Valley neighborhood. We're between Rainbow State Line, bordering West Plaza, Westwood Hills. I'm very concerned about this and really shocked. I'd be very curious, and if it was in the opening comments, I did miss it. I moved up to because I couldn't hear when I arrived. I'd be curious. We had a one house per block STR established some years ago with permitting. That is, let me see, you can't miss every single block. I was fortunate in the house that was on my block. I knew the owner. He lived a few blocks away and he was very responsible. The next block, not at all. And if I've learned, I believe that a minority of the STRs in Kansas City, Kansas, Missouri, perhaps, are not on permit. They're just taking place. So I would think that before you increase it to every fourth house, 25% of the housing population, housing stock can do this. You register everybody who is already actively handling this because you're multiplying. It's an exponential problem. I saw a map that are dots of current STRs, and you can't use a dot. You would need a paintbrush in my little area. We, as I said, we're on the other side of State Line Road, West Plaza, and the crime, the problems that they are having. I can walk a block over there. I can walk to the plaza in Westport. So it is, and you talk about the character of a neighborhood. It is a residential neighborhood. We're trying to have, I've invested in my house. This is my first house that I bought in my 50s. And it is a neighborhood of residents and a wonderful mixture of people.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. So I just am shocked. Again, curious why it went from who brought this thought and out of nowhere became 25% of homes. That's far too many. I don't know if it's going to be shared or by a neighborhood or who has that need or why that was called, but you won't be able to control something like that and the problems. Take care of those that are already show that you can register those that are going on right now and dealing with the current problems before you multiply it. Thank you very much.
Yep. Next one, step on up. And again, your name and city of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Erin Strika, resident of Kansas City, Kansas. I also have only an objection to the part of this ordinance that sets the cap at 25%. I want to talk a little bit about why that high density is problematic. And I just want to ask you for a second to picture 1 in 4 houses on your block or in your building as hotels without an owner on site or present or able to respond to you. The kind of day-to-day contacts and activities that make up a neighborhood just aren't possible with guests who come through. The dealing with litter, the getting help for another neighbor who needs it, the people who trap, neuter, and release strays from my neighbor over here. We would have 25% of our neighborhoods not able to participate in that. And if anyone's thinking, well, 25% is a maximum, we won't get there. I want to let you know, you make a lot more money using your house as an Airbnb in Rosedale than you do as a long-term renter. So I'm pretty concerned we're going to get to that 25% on every block in Rosedale pretty quickly. I also want to say that in Rosedale, we have a major affordable housing problem. And in fact, we have a density problem at this point. Frank Russian Elementary, which I think is one of the best elementary schools in KCKPS, had to lay off a teacher this year because we had low enrollment. We are having families pushed out of our neighborhood by our lack of affordable housing, and STRs are non-owner occupied STRs are exacerbating that. And in particular, I want to share a story from a woman on my staff who couldn't be here tonight, who has lived in Rosedale for 17 years. She's volunteered with us the entire time. She's been on the board of ONDA. She's got 2 kids who attend Frank Russian. Her lease is up at the end of April, and she cannot find a place to live in Rosedale. She is moving out of Wyandotte County. And she shared with me that it is particularly
1 minute remaining.
appalling to her. Thank you. To be going around looking for rentals and seeing houses that she looked at years ago before she moved into this place that are now Airbnbs. We have lost housing stock here. And I just want to share in her words, I've advocated for this community most of my adult life, but I can't make it work anymore. It breaks my heart to give up my vote and voice in local government. Let our neighborhoods thrive and be filled with neighbors, not tourists. Let the housing be for the people who stabilize and support the community and who stay here. I want to say I completely understand that Planning Commission wanted a percentage and not a number. I would submit that 25 is also a number and is also arbitrary. But if we've got to have a percentage, thank you, Commissioner Ramirez, for your comments. I might suggest you think about 1% or perhaps 3% in one.
Your time has expired.
I have just like 20 more seconds.
I'm seeing nods, so go for it.
Thank you. Commissioner, in one of your examples of the house with 30 homes on it, 3% would be 1 home on that block. I understand blocks vary, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. 25% irreparably damages the fabric of a neighborhood. 3% might be a little bit more manageable. Thank you.
Gilbert Pentar, 4178 Cambridge, Rosedale. Gunnar, could you pull up the map that you showed with the dots on it, the red dots? And hopefully we can get that pretty quick so it doesn't count against my time.
Can you begin while we're waiting on the map?
Certainly. While I understand staff is overburdened and taxed and underpaid and they work hard, and I have to salute them for this code. The existing code, as Gunnar pointed out, pretty much mirrors, or the processes mirrors this new code. This new code isn't really cutting it, and therefore, we're looking at new codes. I suggest that we take care first, before we adopt codes, further codes, that we take care of those that are illegal, and survey how many we have of those dots. And you'll see a bunch of dots in Rosedale. You'll see a bunch of dots in Armourdale. Let's find out which ones are illegal and which ones are legal, and say, in certain densities in certain parts of the city, we should probably limit the number of SUPs in a certain area because it attracts the disincentive of owner occupancy. Owner occupancy is being riddled in Rosedale by investors that are buying houses saying, well, I'm going to buy this house, I'm going to fix it up, and I'm going to get a SUP to rent it and make money. And that goes totally contrary to any master plan I've seen. Totally contrary. You want to retain owner occupancy. And so maybe in Rosedale, we have only 12 SUPs in a geographical area versus 25% of
1 minute remaining.
which would be 28 homes in 110 homes. Crazy. And you're promoting that to occur within our neighborhoods. And as Aaron mentioned, busting up the character of the neighborhood, and people can't live in the neighborhood they grew up in. You know, there are so many discrepancies in the current code. Parties are not defined. What's a party? It's not clear. It's not spelled out. Yeah, other parts of the code talk about noise levels and so forth and late night activities, but this code relies on neighborhoods to enforce it. It relies on these guys to then take those complaints versus having a code that outlines.
Your time has expired.
Can I ask for another 5 seconds?
So move.
Instead of saying that you're going to get an automatic revocation, if these things occur, you're revoked. You know, we're going to have a public hearing tomorrow, not a year from tomorrow, not 5 years from tomorrow. I had a property at 1901 West 42nd Street that I talked to Mr. Hand about back in 2020.
Sir, we need to wrap it up. We can't start a whole nother story. We've already had an extra minute.
And it's still there, illegal. Everyone's complained about it. And I strongly suggest before you adopt codes that you really find out what the problem is, because there's no way that staff can enforce what's being proposed to you. And I'd be glad to meet with planning staff. I'd be glad to meet with RDA. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, James Bain, Kansas City, Kansas. I didn't think I would be back so soon.
Standing in a slightly different location than
Yeah,
usual.
right. So a couple things that I wanted to discuss. We've talked about a great community outreach, and I've complimented Michael and Gunnar whenever I've seen them at community events presenting on this. It was wonderful. But this now is the first time we actually have an ordinance. The previous presentations was all about the goals of the new ordinance, and the goals were great. The goals, as I remember them, were getting people to comply. We've heard about that and how important that is, and I am 100% on board. But when we talk about getting people to comply, there has to be a reasonable pathway to complying, and this ordinance does not allow a reasonable pathway. You saw the list of requirements that are, and a lot of those things are added from the current SUP requirements. Those requirements are a heavy lift, and a couple of them deal with the $1 million of insurance, the safety inspection. I talk to short-term rental owners. I'm in groups of short-term rental owners. Safety of guests or not having enough insurance is not in the top 20 items that short-term rental people face. It's not an issue. And so I don't know who thought this was a problem, or it certainly was not discussed at any community outreach event I was at, or this commission, this meeting. We've never talked about $1 million insurance or guest safety. That's brand new. One of a thing I did want to talk about, since this ordinance, since the new regulations were published, we have not had a community outreach event. There's never been outreach to short-term rental owners. They have all our emails. They have all our phone numbers. They could have easily said, come visit about short-term rental licenses. Here's some new regulations. The outreach, it's time to bring short-term rental owners to the table to address any problems. I can tell you
1 minute remaining.
Is not a problem. So I don't understand. Putting these obstacles in front of people is not a way to get people to register. Other people have said it too. Getting people to register should be the #1 priority. Then we can go from there, and we can track data on any other problems. People have mentioned parties and whatnot. I don't know. I don't have parties. I'm owner occupied. That was another goal that we've talked about for months, is making a separate category for owner occupied. If you look in the ordinance, a whole list of requirements that are cumbersome, and you have to renew annually on the administrative process. To go through that every year is not reasonable. These short-term rentals, for most people, it's a hobby. I live in mine. I'm rented 30 times a year, 35 times a year. It is not reasonable to do $1 million in insurance or in home inspections every year.
Your time has expired.
If I can just have 20 more seconds, I promise. I think I do more business than most short-term, most owner occupied. And I'm talking about only owner occupied because they should be a separate category because they are easier. But I was probably rented 30 to 35 times last year, $14,000. And most of that $14,000 I put right back into improving the property, which we've talked about that too. So what I'm saying is this is not a big money maker. This is a hobby. I enjoy hosting people in my home. I enjoy bringing people to Kansas City, Kansas. It's not, if we're trying to get people to comply, it has to be a reasonable pathway for people that are doing this as a hobby, that it is not a major business. So thank you.
Anyone else here in person to make comment? Did we make any progress on the online issue? Shall we give it a whirl?
We are going to do a test to see if we can get some response.
Hi, Rachel Russell. Can you hear me?
online that hasn't been able to speak and they are able to send written comment, we can make sure that's distributed to these commissioners and the other commissioners, the commission at large in written form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have Donna with Cernich Group.
Donna? Can you hear me, Donna?
Can you hear me?
I can. Give me your last name as well, Donna, and your city of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
I just promoted her.
Donna Henderson Hoyt with Cernich Group, Kansas City, Kansas. And I am commenting, kind of piggybacking on the fact that if you can't enforce what you currently have on the books, how are we going to enforce this new policy per your own planning and director's comments in one of these meetings? Again, I've been following this for a few months in the commission meetings, in the planning and zoning meetings. It's been pushed back and talked about bringing this to the committee, bringing this to the public, and it has never reached the public. I work and manage properties, work with investors, and I can tell you my community is a better place because of the properties that are been bought up and brought back to a livable and nice condition, which is where most people want to come when they want to stay. Yet I have properties that have been in my community for well over decades where I cannot get the UG to fix. Abandoned properties, boarded up properties, and codes have been called on them. You know, you're bringing in another project without fixing what's already in the books and which we need help on. You know, you're discriminating against some who may have multiple properties. In my case, I deal with people who have multiple properties in a community. Your own planning and zoning director is going to have properties in some of these two Rosedale and Strawberry Hill areas. What is his goal and why is it wanting to be in his control instead of rental licensing? You know, the process is outrageous. It's difficult. If you can't get rental licensing controlled by a simple application, how are you expecting these
1 minute remaining
to come in and work on these properties and go through the process? It's outrageous, and it needs to be discussed with the investors and brought to the public as it has been requested in many of the meetings over the last few months. And that's where I would ask that you postpone this as the Missouri side has this past week, to get more public input and get the talks going between the investors who are building and revitalizing our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online, clerk?
We do have Adrian Boards. I'm trying to promote her to panelist. Ms. Boards, you'll need to unmute.
Hi, I'm Adrian Bortz. I'm from Overland Park. I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Mr. Bain was saying and the lady before me. I've been a short-term rental owner. I've gone through the process many times. Each time has been a little bit different. There's been things that have been added. Was extremely extensive. I went through it. I'm happy to go through it. I want those that are in this business, if they're running it as a business or they're running it more as a hobby, I want to make sure that they're screening their guests, that they're bringing in good people to our communities, and that money is being spent back into Wyandotte, because I think Wyandotte is a great community that deserves it as much as any other city around here. But I agree, this does not encourage others to do so. It required thousands of dollars in inspections on brand new builds. There was a 3-month turnaround time on it. And again, to Gunner's point, we're not monitoring it. It was kind of frustrating as somebody who has followed the process to a T for the past 5 years, since the beginning of the short-term use process or special use permit, that to see that only 50 or 60 of them are permitted and that there's 166 out there total. So my frustration is, again, like, why are we adding all these rules if it's not even going to be enforced anyways? My goal in all of this would be to come up with a plan with short-term rental hosts and come up with a good plan that benefits.
1 minute remaining.
And I also think I agree with the other gentleman who spoke that Rosedale and some of the other areas have a different density than, say, out by Legends. I think that that should be accounted for as well. There's a lot more people in a closed, condensed area down in Rosedale. I agree with that. And it's not necessarily always a one size fit all. So that's all I have. So thank you.
Anyone else online, clerk?
We have no other hands raised.
I do want to thank staff for troubleshooting, getting those folks so that they were able to speak with us. All right, I have one question and then we'll need to make some decisions, ladies and gentlemen. So when this comes before the full commission, will it come as a planning item with an additional public hearing?
The intent is to, as I understand it currently, is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. The current intent is to have it on the standing committee agenda. We have noted at agenda review this morning that there will be another presentation and it will not be on consent. So yes, we anticipate if it were to move forward tonight to give the presentation again before the full commission on Thursday.
But there wouldn't be a public hearing because it would be on a standing committee agenda.
Legal counsel.
Legal.
Again, all these meetings have been publicly noticed meetings
Well,
for the
and it
last
just
3 months. So
it just popped into my mind because I was thinking, oh my gosh, if we don't get these people to speak, are they going to have an opportunity? But since it popped into my mind, I wanted to get clarification. Drake, welcome.
Patrick
You
Waters,
almost got away without talking.
Acting Chief Counsel. Can I just confirm, what was the vote at Planning Commission?
6-1.
Okay, so it will have a public hearing because it's not unanimous. So there would be a public hearing at full commission.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just make that note to anyone who might be watching from the public or who might watch this video later on. If you wanted to have an opportunity to speak, you're going to have that opportunity again on Thursday, assuming we move forward or something tonight. So if you were on, if they were watching on Zoom earlier and they dropped off in despair, there's still one more chance. All right, commissioners, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. All right. As I said before, I'm going to ask that we amend the density requirement back down to 1 block. So I'll ask committee counsel to walk me through this. I'm going to spell out the specific sections and everything so that it's easier for you and for the record. So please correct me if I say it wrong. I would like a motion to amend section 27-623, subsection C, 2i.
This is Z Bishop with the Unified Government Legal Department. I think, Commissioner, we're actually looking at section 27-623, sub B, sub 2, C, 2 and 3.
Okay. The section of the ordinance that states the 25 density, I would like to change back to one block, 1 STR per block.
And are you making a motion to move the ordinance forward with that section amended?
Yes, for approval, or does any other commissioners have questions? For approval with the change of the 25% density to 1 per block. And Gunnar, you would ask this to be fast tracked, correct?
Yes, but may I quick point of order before that motion moves forward? If that's all right. just reflecting on some of the comments, the way we wrote the ordinance was to mirror administrative and SUP standards and requirements, right? So it's the same thing, two different processes. If this commission were to adhere to what was currently commented as it relates to actively owner occupieds, which would go through an administrative review, which are typically homeowners who are renting their home, the $1 million liability insurance for SUPs was geared admittedly towards businesses and investors. So I think staff would be amenable if you wanted to change that standard for actively owner occupied to just be proof of homeowners insurance, because while it may not have been a conversation per se, I think safety is a huge issue for staff in this issue when you're taking your residential business that may or may not have be up to code and turning it into a residential home and turning it into a business that you let people in. Yes, liability. And I think the reduction of risk is of great concern to the UG. So if we wanted to, we would recommend that change as well.
And to council, yes, if we can add that. The striking the $1 million insurance to just proof of homeowners insurance
For administrative reviews.
for administrative reviews.
This is Z Bishop with Unified Government Legal Department. And could I just ask for some clarification, Gunnar? So I am looking at the language that's on page 24 in 3 sub 3. Is that what we're looking at?
Mayor Farley, planning urban design, that is correct.
That is correct. Okay. Right. So Commissioner, I just want to make sure that I have this correct. I believe that what you are moving is for approval of this item, changing the language that is in section 27-623 B2 C2 and 3 to revert to a density of 1 short-term rental per block. And then also the language in the same section 27-623 B3 to allow for proof of homeownership for the owner occupied, and it would still be proof of at least $1 million insurance liability policy for non-owner occupied. Is that correct?
Yes, but Ms. Bishop, I think you may have misspoke and said home ownership, not homeowners insurance.
Sorry, you're
Just to
correct.
clarify.
Yeah, homeowners insurance.
Yes, they have to own the home and have it insured.
And then the whole motion to be fast-tracked.
Yes, that is all. That's my second. Sorry about that. That was a lot, but we got there.
I think I have a motion in a second, but then I also think I have comments, Commissioner Bynum and then Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. So I have no trouble with the motion or the amended motion that's on the table, but I have questions, I think, that I'm going to rattle off, and curious as to whether these things can be rectified, probably not before adoption, but perhaps after, if that makes any sense, because one of the things we talked about earlier was kind of getting something done with regard to having this authorized in code. And so part of what I heard from those who spoke to us tonight was that if we have a problem owner, permit holder, revocation needs to be quick. I heard we need to adopt code that staff can enforce. I heard that we need to have a meeting outreach with the short-term rental owners and also those who are investing in our community. And that some of what we had placed in the regulation was expensive, but I think we may have just handled at least part of that. So my questions are, number one, can revocation be quick? Do we have the authority to revoke quickly? And that may require, some legal speak as to what qualifies us for revocation. adopting code that we can enforce. Again, my frustration with rental licensing isn't so much that we have it so much as it is the ways that the state of Kansas have enacted legislation that limits us locally. And so I don't know if you want to speak to that or not. And then I'm in favor of adopting the ordinance and moving forward, but I wonder, do we have a way to find out not only who all of the short-term rental owners are, including those that aren't in compliance, but other investors? And that may be just a broad brushstroke, just an open-ended invitation to those who are choosing to invest. Or I'm not really looking to invite more STR, frankly. So I'm just curious, I guess, whether we would even have interest in inviting those who are currently landlords to have this conversation. I'm kind of tossing that on the table because when we have a community member speak of those who are investing, I have to assume that she means those who are investing in housing, which means they're probably landlords of some kind. I'll stop and let you maybe try to address some of that.
Sure. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. You all know I'm the first one to say you can never do enough engagement. This will require ongoing engagement. And again, as per the motion by the Planning Commission, we have to go back to them in a year to report back on how things have gone and bring any recommendations for any changes to anything, applications, policies, the policy itself, or any procedures. I think our goal from day one was always to create something that was tenable for staff as we are today, knowing that that could change in the future, right? And we admittedly know that that's not perfect. I would argue nothing in the code about short-term rentals doesn't help us enforce it at all. So to have an ordinance that we can now officially enforce that has standards that don't change like they have changed over the last couple of years as we work towards trying to figure out how to manage short-term rentals, I think creates a level of certainty, whether you think it's onerous or not. It is a level of certainty, which I think is important, and I think creates a level playing field for folks. SUP revocation is in the code currently. I think it stands on its own. Again, has been, in my understanding, rarely used. It requires basically either for it to be put on a board of commissioner hearing or a special hearing of the board of commissioners to do so, but that exists. And then administrative permits can be revoked at will, especially with the backing and the standards that are put into place through an administrative process through this proposed ordinance. Again, I think I would just, I think I would point out that while it might sound like a lot for everybody to do the work, whether it's administrative or through an SUP, it is what we currently ask all short-term rentals to do as they walk through the door. Again, this has been a moving target as we work towards trying to figure out what the best ordinance to start is. And that's been difficult for some short-term rental owners, especially people who have come in through renewals. Commissioner Ramirez, I'm thinking about that guy on Southwest right now that's actually up for approval on Thursday, his renewal. Things changed a little bit between his last renewal and the new renewal, and we pushed through it and we got it done. Like I don't want to do that, but we've learned as we've progressed, and this is where we're at. But after the renewal, again, we're going to work through the process and try to define what that looks like, both administratively. It'll stay the same thing for SUPs, but it should be a lot quicker because everything that you produce to get your original approval is the same stuff we're going to ask for in the renewal. So it's not like you're producing new things. You're picking up your file, you're submitting an application, you're paying the fee for that application plus a business license fee. And that's basically it. I think we're going to put together something like an affidavit that says for administrative reviews, has anything changed? And when you sign it and says nothing's changed, there's no reason for me to go digging through your files unless something changes, right? And so I think that should expedite things, maybe not on the first round, but certainly as renewals move through. In regards to an investor summit, we have engaged short-term rental owners. Again, we didn't engage all of them, and I apologize for that if we should have, but I am equally on the fence about your idea currently on the table. I don't know if we want to overly promote, but I think there will be a round of outreach where we talk about this ordinance, where we let people know that it's now in effect. We put them on notice moving forward. And then I think the zoning blitz thereafter puts those property owners. That host compliance platform that we get doesn't give us contact information. It gives us property addresses. And we can get the contact information once we have the property address. But basically, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go to all 166. And again, just as a reminder, it's a little less than that. Once we scrub those numbers, we have to go through a couple of steps once we take that raw data. And typically we eliminate 24 maybe every time, but that's still 150-ish, right? It's still a lot. So I'm not trying to diminish that, but we go through, we scrub the numbers, we hang a door hanger, tell them they need to come in. If we need to pursue additional action for people who don't come in, we'll follow up with notices of violation. But again, we're talking about potentially 150 notices of violation and 2 zoning enforcement officers. If we can't enforce the things that we don't have on the books now, the only way to do that would be to increase enforcement. And that's just, again, we're trying to create an ordinance that balances what our current capacity is. And again, we'll have a year to assess that. We'll come back in a year to assess that.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Well, I'll start where Mr. Hand left off because I think he just laid out the plan to one of the questions that I was going to ask, which dealt with what is the plan to get the non-compliant to comply. So I think I just heard a reasonable answer to that in a number, roughly 150 currently now. And is that a mix of owner occupied and the other version?
Yeah, it'll be a mix, but again, the vast majority are investors.
Okay, which leads me to my second question, comment, spurred a lot by what I've heard tonight in developing this ordinance and the outreach that you've done. And we appreciate the investment into homes that may have been dilapidated and that type of thing. But with respect to non-owner occupied, was there any discussion about simply not having that category at all in Wyandotte County? And I asked that question listening to some of the comments here tonight about what that does to long-term rental options here and the forming or not of stronger community and neighborhood boundaries. So I'll just stop right there. Let you answer.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. I think we tried to find a balance because what we recognized was the investment occurring to turn properties into short-term rentals was doing a lot to improve our housing stock, even though it wasn't necessarily affordable, being converted to affordable or to long-term use, right? But there's a balance there where we're trying to find the medium where we allow that reinvestment, rehabilitation of existing structures. Often, I mean, some of these are extreme situations where it's been burnt out for years and no one's going to tackle that except for the guy or gal who wants to do a short-term rental because that's the only, rate of return that works to rehab that deep of a project, right? So we don't want to discourage those people from doing that. Otherwise, we would still have that burnout house in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. And so I would say, no, I don't think we ever addressed had a conversation about if we should eliminate all non-owner occupied short-term rentals because they make up about 95 or more % of all of our short-term rentals. There's like 4 of 50, I think is what the stat said, whatever the percentage is. I'm sorry, I'm not good at math in my head. There you go. That's why he's the attorney. And which is easy math because you double it, it's 50. Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks for making me look funny. So again, it was not the issue. I think what we saw was an imbalance that we were trying to improve, to have more people engage in owner occupied short-term rentals as supplemental income. And so that's why we proposed to create the administrative process. So
Well, going back to your example with the investor in the burned out house, it's sounding as though that investment would not have been made, even though they could do long-term rental, because the numbers would not pencil for them. Is that pretty much it?
that's how we understand it. We've worked with a bunch of different groups who do these types of investments. One of our staffers has been involved before she joined the UG, was involved in some of these groups. And so those are some of the places we outreached. And that's what they were telling us. Yes, is a lot of the reinvestment occurring is because the dollars and cents just work out for short-term rentals versus long-term rentals versus any other option. So yes, on a couple of those, I think it wouldn't have happened if we would not allow short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. There are no further comments or questions. I will call for roll call.
Roll call. Kane.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you guys for your work.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2 is an update on the American Rescue Plan, otherwise known as ARPA, and Debbie is coming forward for that presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Debbie Johnsher, acting CFO. So I am going to give just a quick update on ARPA. And did just want to note, tonight I'm planning to give an update on the subrecipient process and where we are with that. And then the plan is to come back in a future meeting and give a full update on all of the spending for all of the ARPA funds. So tonight, so just wanted to kind of go over the process for the allocation payments. So first off, funding allocations were approved in November 2022. Those are the allocations that I'm talking about tonight. So after that was approved, the staff started gathering information, documentation that we were going to need for payments from the separate recipients so that we could get them set up and ready to go once we were ready to make payments. After that, we held some subrecipient project budget meetings. We held one in January and one in February. And this was kind of an introduction to iParametrics, which is the group that we hired to help manage and kind of oversee the process for helping us with all the requirements of the Treasury regarding this funding. So it introduced the subrecipients to them because they were going to be working directly with them, as well as kind of went over kind of briefly what their contracts were going to be that were going to be required to be signed, basically stating what their requirements were going to be for receiving the funding. And so we kind of went over all that. Then after those meetings, iParametrics set up individual meetings with each one of the subrecipients to get their information, kind of talk about their projects, what was eligible, and then what documentation, kind of went over that in more detail, what they would need. So then after that, we started sending out, once we received the agreements back and were signed off on, we started making the initial 20% payments, and those have been occurring since February up until now. And I have a slide at the very end that kind of updates where we are with each one of those. And then now we're working on finishing up. We've got a couple of groups that still need to send their contracts back. And then we're working on documentation for them to send in as they start spending. 20% was to give them upfront funding if they didn't have startup money. And then as they spend the money, they're submitting their receipts. And then we are going to start reimbursing off those receipts all the way up until they have reached their budgeted amount. So just wanted to note for the award allocations, we had 19 nonprofit groups. 14 of those have received their initial payment as of today. We did receive one additional agreement last week, and so that payment is in progress right now. And then we are still working on 4 other agreements with that iParametrics is conversing with them. UG department allocations, their budgets are set up for spending. And then the other allocations, if you recall, the cities of Bonner Springs and Edwardsville received the remainder of the county funding. And so we have set up meetings. We've had initial meetings between iParametrics and both staff from Bonner Springs and Edwardsville to talk about their projects. So this was just the last information. I know that it's kind of hard to read, but it was included in your pack, and it just kind of shows all the groups, their allocations, and then the ones that we have made the initial 20% payment on. So as I said, there are still four groups, outside groups that have not, nonprofit groups that have not turned back in their contracts. So iParametrics is working with them. And I did confirm that they have had contact with each one of them, and they're working on their agreements now. Village Initiative is the one that we just received this week. And even though I've got their payment amount in there, they are the one that we're getting, they should be receiving their payment within the next week or so. Then I've also listed out all the UG allocations, as well as the cities of Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. So that's kind of where we are in the process. If there's any questions I can answer.
Yep.
This is just information only.
I will say is for the benefit of the group here, so the ARPA committee is not meeting anymore, having completed the allocation. So really, this body is now the sort of recipient of ARPA information, as that individual committee is no longer meeting. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bynum?
Thanks. Thank you. First of all, thank you for all you've done to keep this moving. So we have 4 that need to sort of complete paperwork. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Who is there a designated internal staff person that any of these groups can go to, but specifically these 4 that are still trying to finish up paperwork?
That would have been Gwen Thomas. However, she's out right now. So I would say probably I would be the contact then if they need to. I think most of them have been, all of them have been in contact with iParametrics. Not only Erica, but also their legal team as well. I think that's Kennedy Shannon. So, and I think she's been in touch with all of them.
Okay, because I did have one ask me just the other day. So it would be okay to refer someone to you?
Yes, that would be fine.
I mean, I know you have plenty to do, but I just know some of these folks are trying to get things lined up so that they can make their way through this process. And then what, if you know off the top of your head, is the spend by date for all of the ARPA money?
For all of the ARPA money has to be allocated to eligible projects by December 31st, 2024. Then they have until December 31st, 2026 to spend the funding. But with these contracts, we're planning to do a review in 2024 to determine that the groups are going to be able to spend, because after December of 2024, we can't allocate to another project. So if somebody comes to us, you know, in January of 2025 and says, I can't spend my money, we would not be able to allocate it. We would not have the ability to allocate to anyone else. So we'll be doing that review probably early on in 2024, probably multiple times. we're going to be checking in with them. We're going to know as they're sending in their reimbursements. So if we don't get reimbursement from someone, we'll probably be checking in on them to find out, where they are in their project. And that's what iParametrics is helping us with. They're kind of overseeing that process, and they're going to make sure that they stay in contact and also let us know if they see any issues with any of the funding.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, your update is much appreciated, and we'll look forward to another update soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, team, our last item is an update on the protest petition process. And I think Patrick has been patiently waiting, even though he had to run up here during one of the last items. Welcome.
Thank you. Patrick Waters, Acting Chief Counsel. I do have a PowerPoint. Wait 1 second here. As you know, over the course of the last year, we had several protest petitions that were very close. They came within 1 or 2 signatures of being valid. Luckily, the final decisions on these applications, none of them were affected by whether the petition was valid or not because of the overwhelming approval of those applications. But it did lead us to decide that it was time to look at these guidelines and update them and kind of see what's working and what's not. And first, I want to really thank the neighborhood leaders that I spoke with. I spoke with neighborhood leaders from the Russian Hill neighborhood, from Spring Valley, from Cernich, and they provided a lot of good feedback in terms of what changes they like to see to the process and what they didn't understand about the process. So first of all, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is the actual state law where the protest petition comes from. Kind of the main things I've highlighted are that their neighbors have 14 days after the hearing to get it in. It requires signatures from 20% or more of the owners of all the real property within the notice area. So a lot of people are confused. They think it depends on the number of people who sign it, and it's not really. It's the percentage of the acreage, really, of the people who sign it. And then you can see the orange highlighted. It shows what a dramatic effect this has on an application. It goes from a simple majority to a 3/4. So it really is a powerful tool for those who can make it work. So also state law also allows us, as you see here, it says that this act is not intended to prevent the enactment or enforcement of additional laws and regulations on the same subject, which are not in conflict with the provisions of this act. So that's how by ordinance or by regulation guidelines, we can add additional requirements as long as they don't conflict. And so that's what we're trying to do with these guidelines. So this is not an exhaustive list, but here are some of the main kind of concerns that I heard from the neighbors. So the first one is that the names of the owners on planning department's list may not be completely up to date or may be inaccurate. There's uncertainty about which properties were completely within the 200-foot boundary and which were only partially in it. And I'll get to that later, why that's so important. Some people didn't understand why the signatures must match exactly what is on the deed. And there were complaints about the protest petition guidelines not being available in Spanish. So the first one, names of owners on the list may not be completely up to date. So what I've tried to make clear in the updates to the guidelines is that the Register of Deeds office is really the holder of the most accurate and up-to-date information. There are times when ownership can change hands from the time notice goes out to when the protest petition is due. And that could be several months of a gap. And so we have seen cases where ownership actually transferred, and it made a difference because the owner that was on our original notification list was no longer the owner. There are also issues where we found errors where maybe the database that we were using and putting out through the notice process wasn't completely up to date. So we just want to stress that the Register of Deeds ultimately is the place for people to go. There are some people talking about the uncertainty of which properties are within the 200-foot boundary. So this is the change we've made is unique, I believe, in all of Kansas. I've not seen anyone do this. We have actually provided step-by-step instructions that can show people how to draw a boundary line if you want to by using UG-Labs. We caution that it is not official, but it does give you, a pretty good rough estimate of the search area that you're looking for. Here's an example of just using City Hall of how that boundary would be created. There's a lot of frustration that we have rejected signatures that were not shown exactly as they were on the deed in the Register of Deeds office. So I would, point out that our current guidelines require that they be exactly as they appear on the deed. And that is not uncommon at all. In fact, I've not seen any municipality that does it any other way. And really, I think the main reason is that any other way is just going to lead to subjectivity by the staff members. And I don't know where you draw that line. If it's signed John A. Smith, is John Smith okay? Is Johnny Smith okay? Just where at some point it just becomes, arbitrary what do you accept and what you don't. And so we've always stood by the fact that it should be exactly as it is on the deed. That is supported by the Kansas Attorney General opinion. And so that's kind of the guidance that we've gone by.
Patrick, can I interrupt to ask, when they get the list of property owners, do they know then what it says in the deed? Because I don't know what my deed says.
So
do they know what it has to match?
That's a good question. So it is hopefully the information that we have in the database should be the name that it shows up in the deed. But again, we can't guarantee it's 100% accurate. And so I would always caution people, if you have a question, go to the Register of Deeds office. I talked with Ms. Burns. They are happy. If you walk in, they are happy to show you how to search their database. And that way you can know for certain.
Commissioner Bynum.
I have a question on this one though, because I've seen lists generated where it's trustee ownership. And so how do you counsel folks to sign when that's the ownership?
To sign as trustee.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jane Smith as trustee, however that is on the deed.
However it's listed.
Yeah.
Sign it. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I got brain fart here. But what happens if you don't own the property, but you're renting the property?
Yes, Commissioner, you do have to find the owner, and that's an issue for some people, and they've expressed frustration with that. We're limited by what the statute requires. And so if someone is renting, do you need to ask them, do you know where the owner is? Can you track them down? Typically our tax database should show where the taxes are being sent to. And a lot of times, maybe that's in California. You may have to try and write a letter to the owner or find out. So it's not always easy, but we are stuck with that.
Okay, so the owner is the only one that can vote.
The actual owner, not the renter.
I've never thought about that just now.
Yep. So again, every municipality that I've researched requires this, and I don't recommend a change on this just because any other way, it's really just going to make the staff have to make subjective decisions about what to accept and what not to. We will update the guidelines in Spanish. I think that's a very good recommendation. I'm glad that was mentioned. Some additional changes. we've confirmed that if a developer makes substantial changes after a project is remanded back to planning commission, that the neighbors may get a second chance at a protest petition. This actually happened fairly recently within the last year where enough changes were made. And that's based on case law. So that's not just something that we're pulling out of thin air, that there is backing for that. We encourage people to submit petitions well before the 14th day, if possible. We know that sometimes it takes a long time to gather the decisions, but what happens a lot of times is we get a protest petition on the 14th day. By the time we see an error, or by the time the developer reviews it and sees an error, it's too late to go back. Again, we remind people that petitions are open records and developers have the right to review them, and they often do. They will have their legal counsel look over it, and if they find an error, we have to, they have rights to as the applicant, and so we have to honor that.
Commissioner Bynum.
So the 14 days is in the state law,
Correct.
and day 15 is too late.
Yes.
And so if they can get it done in like 7 days, then there's 7 more days to correct
Correct.
error. And then clarity on the changes, that one. Confirms if a developer makes substantial changes to their project after it's remanded back to planning commission, what does that mean?
So this actually came up with the 47th and Rainbow project, where it was remanded, and in the intervening time, there were changes that developer made to try and comply with requests that were made. And so the idea is that a developer should not be able to take one project forward, make changes, and then say, "Oh, well, too bad, you lost your chance. You can't protest the changes I've made."
Oh, I see. So in that example, there was a valid protest petition in front of us that came along with that zoning change.
There was a petition, it wasn't valid, but there was a petition, it got remanded. And then we told the neighbors they would then get a second chance at another petition because of the changes.
But now we're going to say that in fact, if it's substantial, you would have another opportunity.
You would, and we did that. We followed that process and during that application as well.
Thank you.
So, but we didn't have that in our guidelines. So we clarify that properties that are entirely within the 200-foot buffer count more than properties only partially within it. This is something I think a lot of people don't think about. This is an example. If you see those parcels on the far right there, yes, they're within the protest petition area, but their signature is going to count for a lot less because again, it's based on acreage. It's not based on the number of people you get. So only that sliver of area that is within the 200-foot boundary counts. And so when people are, making a plan of, what properties do I want to hit first, this is just something to think about that, yeah, it's good to have everyone, but focus on the ones that are entirely within the boundary. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane.
That's the first time that somebody's ever explained it exactly the way I never even thought about the small parcels and the stuff like that. That's really good.
Yeah, and it can definitely make a difference on whether
Well,
you need it or not.
it clarifies it a lot better for me, and I love it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I agree with Commissioner Kane. In my mind, I was thinking the 20%. I thought it was 20% of property owners, not the actual land, the acreage of the land. So, and I think that's good for the community to know as well. hearing it, that it's not the people, it's your property. It's the acreage of your property that will count towards that 20%. So I didn't even think of it that way either. So thank you for that. And I think it was good that we had this come on the agenda and go through the changes so that we ourselves can have a better understanding of our protest petition process. So thank you.
And I do want to thank Director Hand and his staff, because this is the kind of stuff they have to do every time. They have to make these calculations, and they're trying to they're using software to calculate, what that sliver equals. So it's a lot of work for them, and that's why we say don't submit it at the last minute.
Well, and I think for those who, during that one process in question, hypothetically, if there was one landowner that owned all this circle around that property, that one signature is all they would need. So I think that was a big point of confusion. Was it the 20% of the people or 20% of the acreage? And I think Patrick did a great job of clarifying that for everyone. Additional questions or comments? This is for information only. Do we have anyone, clerk, from the public online?
No.
Present here who has comments?
No comments were received, no hands are raised.
Great. Oh, wait. We have a comment about the short-term rentals. We're doing a jump back. Commissioner Bynum.
So sorry, but it occurred to me as I was sitting here that at the 25% per block mechanism on the short-term rentals, like where I live, there might be one house per block, in which case I myself could not have one at all. So I kind of appreciate the change to one per block, because in my case, one is greater than 25%. Just something that crossed my mind when we were talking about that. That's all. Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Kane. Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
I have to talk to you, and I wanted to talk to you right now, but I just Oh, yeah. I think we just revert back to